The shrill sound of an alarm clock pierced the early morning silence, jolting Samantha from her restless sleep. Her heart raced as she fumbled to silence the incessant beeping. As consciousness fully took hold, a wave of nervous excitement washed over her. Today was the day that could change everything. Samantha sat up in her small, sparsely furnished bedroom, running her fingers through her tousled brown hair. Sunlight was just beginning to peek through the faded curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach. At 26 years old, Samantha had faced more than her fair share of challenges. But this job interview at Taylor & Associates felt different. It was an opportunity to finally break free from the cycle of dead-end jobs and financial struggles that had defined her life for so long. As she swung her legs over the side of the bed, her eyes fell on a framed photograph on her nightstand. It showed a younger Samantha, maybe 10 or 11 years old, standing next to a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. Emily, her adoptive mother. Samantha's chest tightened with a mixture of love and complicated emotions. Emily had been her rock, her constant support through years of uncertainty and self-doubt. But there was always that nagging feeling, that sense of not quite belonging, that Samantha could never fully shake. "Focus, Sam," she muttered to herself, pushing those thoughts aside. Today wasn't about the past. It was about building a better future. Samantha padded to the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face to wake herself up fully. As she stared at her reflection in the mirror, she tried to channel the confidence she so desperately needed. Her green eyes, flecked with gold, looked back at her with determination. She had worked hard for this opportunity, spending countless nights studying and preparing. She deserved this chance. Back in her room, Samantha opened her closet, surveying the limited options before her. She needed something professional, something that would make the right impression. Her hand hesitated over a navy blue blazer, a thrift store find that she had carefully tailored to fit her petite frame. It wasn't designer, but it was the best she had. As she rummaged through her jewelry box for a pair of simple earrings, her fingers brushed against something unexpected. Curious, Samantha pulled out a delicate gold chain with an amethyst pendant. Her brow furrowed in confusion. She didn't remember owning anything this beautiful or presumably expensive. Then a memory flickered to life. This was Emily's necklace. Samantha had seen her wear it on special occasions, always handling it with a reverence that suggested it held some deeper meaning. But why was it here, in Samantha's room? A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Samantha, are you up, sweetheart?" Emily's voice called out. "Yeah, Mom, come in," Samantha replied, quickly clasping the necklace around her neck. She wasn't sure why, but something told her to wear it today. Emily entered, already dressed for her job at the local diner. Her face lit up when she saw Samantha. "Oh, honey, you look so professional. They'd be crazy not to hire you on the spot." Samantha managed a small smile, her nerves returning full force. "Thanks, Mom. I just hope I don't mess this up." Emily crossed the room and took Samantha's hands in hers. "Listen to me. You are smart, capable and hardworking. You've overcome so much, and I couldn't be prouder of the woman you've become. Just be yourself in that interview, and they'll see what I see every day." Tears pricked at Samantha's eyes, and she pulled Emily into a tight hug. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she whispered. As they separated, Emily's gaze fell on the necklace. For a split second, an unreadable expression flashed across her face. But before Samantha could process it, Emily's warm smile returned. "That necklace, it suits you perfectly. It'll be your good luck charm today." Samantha fingered the smooth amethyst pendant, a sense of calm washing over her. "I hope so. I could use all the luck I can get." After a quick breakfast of toast and coffee, Samantha gathered her things and prepared to leave. Emily stood at the door, worry lines creasing her forehead despite her encouraging smile. "You've got this, sweetie. No matter what happens today, remember how far you've come. I believe in you." With a final hug and a deep breath, Samantha stepped out into the crisp morning air. The weight of the necklace against her chest felt like a talisman, imbuing her with a strange sense of destiny. As she walked to the bus stop, the enormity of what this day could mean settled over her. For years, Samantha had felt like she was drifting, never quite finding her place in the world. The circumstances of her adoption had always been a mystery, leaving her with questions that Emily seemed reluctant or unable to answer. But Samantha had pushed those doubts aside, focusing instead on building a life for herself and making Emily proud. Now, as she boarded the bus that would take her downtown, Samantha allowed herself to dream. If she got this job at Taylor & Associates, it could be the stepping stone to a real career. She could finally start saving money, maybe even go back to school someday. The possibilities seemed endless. As the bus wound its way through the awakening city, Samantha's mind drifted to the interview ahead. She had researched Taylor & Associates extensively, a prestigious marketing firm known for its innovative campaigns and high-profile clients. Landing an entry-level position there would be a game changer. The towering skyscrapers of downtown came into view, their glass facades glinting in the morning sunlight. Samantha's stomach churned with a mixture of excitement and terror. This was so far removed from the life she knew, from the modest neighborhood where she and Emily lived. Could she really belong in a place like this? As the bus neared her stop, Samantha caught her reflection in the window. The woman looking back at her seemed different somehow, more confident, more put together. The necklace gleamed at her throat, a burst of color against her navy blazer. For a moment, Samantha allowed herself to believe that this could be her new reality. Stepping off the bus, Samantha was immediately swept up in the bustling energy of downtown. Men and women in suits hurried past, their purposeful strides and serious expressions making Samantha feel like an imposter. She clutched her folder of resumes and references tighter, willing herself to project the same air of confidence. The address she had memorized led her to a sleek, modern building that seemed to touch the sky. Samantha craned her neck, taking in the imposing structure. This was it, Taylor & Associates. Her future potentially lay behind those gleaming glass doors. Taking a deep breath, Samantha straightened her shoulders and walked toward the entrance. As she reached for the door handle, she caught sight of her reflection once more. The nervous young woman from this morning was gone, replaced by someone who looked like she belonged in this world of high-rises and corporate success. With a silent prayer and a touch of the amethyst pendant for luck, Samantha stepped into the building. The cool, air-conditioned interior washed over her as she approached the reception desk. "Good morning," she said, proud of how steady her voice sounded. "I'm Samantha Davis. I have an interview with Human Resources at 9 a.m. The receptionist smiled warmly, tapping at her computer. "Of course, Miss Davis. Please take the elevator to the 15th floor. Someone will meet you there." As Samantha waited for the elevator, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change dramatically. Little did she know just how prophetic that feeling would turn out to be. The doors slid open, and Samantha stepped inside, her heart pounding with anticipation. As the elevator ascended, carrying her toward an uncertain future, Samantha closed her eyes and took a centering breath. Emily's words echoed in her mind, "Just be yourself." With renewed determination, Samantha squared her shoulders. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them head-on. This was her chance to prove to herself and to the world that she was capable of greatness. The elevator chimed, announcing her arrival at the 15th floor. As the doors opened, Samantha stepped out into a world of polished marble and sleek design. A young woman greeted her with a professional smile. "Miss Davis, welcome to Taylor & Associates. Please follow me." Samantha nodded, her fingers unconsciously reaching for the amethyst pendant. As she followed the woman down a long hallway lined with awards and framed magazine covers, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that this necklace, this unexpected gift from her past, was about to play a much larger role in her future than she could have ever imagined. The woman led Samantha to a plush waiting area, gesturing for her to take a seat. "Mr. Taylor will be with you shortly," she said, before disappearing around a corner. Samantha sank into one of the leather chairs, her mind racing. Mr. Taylor? Surely she wasn't interviewing with James Taylor himself, the CEO of the company. Her research had led her to believe she'd be meeting with someone from human resources, not the head of the entire organization. As the minutes ticked by, Samantha's nerves threatened to overwhelm her. She closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing the way Emily had taught her during particularly stressful times. In through the nose, out through the mouth. With each breath, she tried to channel calm and confidence. "Miss Davis," a deep voice called out, startling Samantha from her meditation. She looked up to see a tall, distinguished man with salt and pepper hair standing before her. His piercing blue eyes seemed to look right through her, and Samantha felt a jolt of recognition, though she was certain she had never met this man before. "Mr. Taylor," she said, rising to her feet and extending her hand. "It's an honor to meet you, sir." As James Taylor took her hand, his gaze fell to the necklace at Samantha's throat. In an instant, his composed demeanor shattered, his face paled, and Samantha could have sworn she saw his hand trembling slightly as he released her grip. "That necklace," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Where did you get it?" Samantha's hand flew to the pendant, suddenly aware of the weight of it against her skin. It belongs to my mother," she stammered, thrown off balance by his intense reaction. "My adoptive mother," she added. Though she wasn't sure why, she felt compelled to make that distinction. James Taylor's eyes snapped back to her face, studying her with an intensity that made Samantha want to shrink away. But she held her ground, meeting his gaze with a mixture of confusion and defiance. After what felt like an eternity, Mr. Taylor seemed to remember himself. He cleared his throat, gesturing toward his office. "Please, Ms. Davis, come in. I believe we have much to discuss." As Samantha followed him into the spacious corner office, she couldn't shake the feeling that this interview was about to take a very unexpected turn. The necklace felt heavier now, as if imbued with the weight of secrets long buried. The door closed behind them with a soft click, and Samantha found herself standing at the threshold of a mystery that would unravel everything she thought she knew about herself and her family. Little did she know that the true purpose of this meeting was about to reveal itself, setting in motion a chain of events that would change not only her life, but the lives of everyone connected to that simple amethyst pendant. Samantha stepped into James Taylor's office, her heart pounding in her chest. The spacious room exuded power and success, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city skyline. Expensive artwork adorned the walls, and a large mahogany desk dominated the center of the room. But it was the man behind the desk that commanded Samantha's attention. James Taylor's piercing blue eyes hadn't left her since the moment he spotted the necklace. There was an intensity in his gaze that made Samantha feel like she was being dissected, analyzed, and pieced back together. She shifted uncomfortably under his scrutiny, her fingers unconsciously reaching for the amethyst pendant. "Please sit down, Ms. Davis," James said, his voice softer now, almost gentle. He gestured to one of the plush leather chairs in front of his desk. Samantha lowered herself into the chair, her back ramrod straight, hands clasped tightly in her lap. This was not at all how she had imagined her interview would go. The carefully rehearsed answers and polished resume in her folder seemed irrelevant now. James settled into his own chair, leaning forward with his elbows on the desk. For a moment, he seemed lost in thought, his eyes unfocused, as if seeing something far away. When he finally spoke, his words caught Samantha completely off guard. "Ms. Davis, I apologize, but I'm afraid this meeting will not be the job interview you were expecting," he began, his voice heavy with an emotion Samantha couldn't quite place. "There are matters of great personal importance that I believe we need to discuss." Samantha's brow furrowed in confusion. "I don't understand, Mr. Taylor. What does this have to do with the necklace?" James took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for what he was about to say. That necklace you're wearing. It once belonged to my daughter, Isabella. She disappeared 19 years ago when she was just a little girl." The words hung in the air between them, charged with a weight that seemed to press down on Samantha's chest. She struggled to process what she was hearing, her mind racing to connect dots that didn't seem to fit together. I'm so sorry for your loss, Mr. Taylor," Samantha managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. But I don't see how this relates to me. As I said, this necklace belongs to my adoptive mother, Emily." James nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving Samantha's face. "And that's precisely why we need to talk, Ms. Davis. You see, that necklace was a one-of-a-kind piece, designed specifically for Isabella by her mother. It's not something that could have simply been purchased or replicated." Samantha felt a chill run down her spine. The implications of what James was saying began to dawn on her, and she felt as if the ground was shifting beneath her feet. "Are you suggesting, do you think there's some connection between your daughter's disappearance and my adoption?" The words tumbled out of Samantha's mouth before she could stop them, giving voice to the unthinkable possibility that was forming in her mind. James leaned back in his chair, his expression a mixture of pain and cautious hope. "I don't know, Miss Davis, but I intend to find out. Can you tell me more about your adoption? How long have you been with Emily?" Samantha swallowed hard, trying to gather her thoughts. The familiar story of her childhood suddenly felt foreign on her tongue. "Emily adopted me when I was 7 years old. I don't remember much from before that. She always told me that my birth parents had died in an accident and that she had been a friend of the family." As she spoke, memories began to surface, fragmented images and feelings that Samantha had long since buried. The uncertainty of her early years, the sense of not belonging, the nightmares that had plagued her as a child, but faded with time. James listened intently, his eyes never leaving Samantha's face. When she finished speaking, he remained silent for a long moment, as if processing every word. "Ms. Davis." "Samantha," he said finally, his voice gentle. "I know this must be overwhelming for you. Believe me, I'm feeling quite overwhelmed myself. But I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think before you answer." Samantha nodded, her throat too tight to speak. "Is there anything at all that you remember from before your adoption? Any faces, names, or places that might seem significant now?" Samantha closed her eyes, trying to sift through the hazy memories of her early childhood. Most of it was a blur, but there was something, a fragment of a memory, that had always felt more like a dream. "There was a beach," she said slowly, her eyes still closed. "I remember the sound of waves and the feel of sand between my toes. And there was a woman, not Emily, but someone else. She was crying, I think, and she gave me something to hold on to." Samantha's eyes flew open as the realization hit her. Her hand flew to the necklace, fingers trembling as they traced the smooth surface of the amethyst. James leaned forward, his face pale. "Samantha, the beach house was Isabella's favorite place. We spent every summer there before she disappeared." The silence that followed was deafening. Samantha felt as if she were standing on the edge of a precipice, teetering between the life she had always known and a truth that threatened to shatter everything. "Mr. Taylor," she began, her voice shaking. "Are you saying, do you think that I might be—" James held up a hand, his expression a mixture of hope and caution. "I don't want to jump to conclusions, Samantha. The disappearance of my daughter has been the defining tragedy of my life, and I've learned the hard way not to let hope cloud my judgment. But I cannot ignore the possibility that's staring us in the face." He stood up, moving to a cabinet on the far side of the office. When he returned, he was holding a framed photograph. With trembling hands, he placed it on the desk in front of Samantha. The photo showed a happy family. James, looking younger and carefree, stood with his arm around a beautiful woman with long dark hair. Between them was a little girl, no more than 6 or 7 years old, with familiar green eyes flecked with gold. Around her neck gleamed an amethyst pendant. Samantha felt the air leave her lungs as she stared at the photo. The resemblance was undeniable. The little girl could have been Samantha herself at that age. "This was taken the summer before Isabella disappeared," James said softly. "It was the last family photo we ever took." Samantha couldn't tear her eyes away from the image. 1,000 questions raced through her mind, each more unsettling than the last. If she really was Isabella, what did that mean for her relationship with Emily? How could the woman who had raised her, loved her, supported her through every challenge, be involved in something so unthinkable? And what about James? The man sitting across from her could be her biological father. The thought was too enormous, too life-altering to fully comprehend. "I know this is a lot to take in," James said, breaking the silence. "And I want you to understand that I'm not making any definitive claims, but I think it's clear that we need to investigate this further." Samantha nodded numbly, still struggling to find her voice. When she finally spoke, her words surprised even her. "What do we do now?" James's expression softened, a glimmer of paternal concern shining through his professional exterior. "First, I think we both need some time to process this. But if you're willing, I'd like to arrange for a DNA test. It's the only way to know for certain." The reality of the situation came crashing down on Samantha. A DNA test, scientific proof that could potentially rewrite her entire identity. The weight of it all was suffocating. I need some air," Samantha stammered, rising abruptly from her chair. The room felt too small, the possibilities too vast. James stood as well, concern etched on his face. "Of course, take all the time you need. Here's my personal number," he said, scribbling on a business card. "Please call me when you're ready to talk more. And Samantha, thank you for coming here today. Whatever the outcome, know that you've given me something I haven't had in a very long time: hope." Samantha took the card with trembling fingers, nodding mutely. As she turned to leave, James called out once more, "And Samantha, please, don't mention any of this to Emily just yet. If there's even a chance that she's involved in Isabella's disappearance, we need to tread carefully." The implication of his words sent a chill down Samantha's spine. Emily, the woman who had been her rock, her safe harbor, potentially implicated in a kidnapping. It was too much to bear. With a final nod, Samantha fled the office, her mind reeling. As she rode the elevator down to the lobby, she felt as if her entire world had been turned upside down. The job interview that was supposed to be a step toward a brighter future had instead opened a door to a past she never knew existed. Stepping out onto the busy street, Samantha gulped in the fresh air, trying to steady herself. The bustling city around her seemed surreal, as if she were watching it all through a hazy filter. How could the world just go on as normal when her entire reality had been shaken to its core? With shaking hands, Samantha pulled out her phone. She had several missed calls from Emily, no doubt checking in to see how the interview had gone. The sight of her adoptive mother's name on the screen sent a fresh wave of confusion and pain through Samantha. For the first time in her life, Samantha found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about Emily. The woman who had dried her tears, celebrated her victories, and stood by her through every hardship. Could she really be capable of something as heinous as kidnapping? As Samantha began the long walk home, her mind raced with possibilities. Should she confront Emily? Should she agree to the DNA test? And what would it mean for her future if she really was Isabella Taylor? The amethyst pendant felt heavy against her chest, a physical reminder of the secrets and lies that now threatened to unravel her entire existence. With each step, Samantha felt as if she were walking away from the life she had always known and toward an uncertain future filled with questions she wasn't sure she was ready to answer. Little did she know that this was just the beginning. The revelations of this day would set in motion a chain of events that would not only change her life, but would also uncover long-buried secrets, test the bonds of family and love, and force everyone involved to confront the painful truths they had spent years trying to forget. As Samantha disappeared into the crowd, the weight of her newfound knowledge pressing down on her shoulders, the stage was set for a drama that would unfold in ways none of them could have ever imagined. The walk home felt like an eternity for Samantha. Her mind raced, replaying every moment of her shocking encounter with James Taylor. The bustling city streets seemed to blur around her, the noise of traffic and pedestrians fading into a distant hum as she grappled with the implications of what she had learned. As she approached the modest apartment building she shared with Emily, Samantha's steps slowed. The familiar sight of home, once a source of comfort, now filled her with a sense of unease. She paused at the entrance, her hand hovering over the door handle. How could she face Emily now, knowing what she knew, or rather, what she didn't know? Taking a deep breath, Samantha steeled herself and entered the building. As she climbed the stairs to their third-floor apartment, each step felt heavier than the last. The weight of secrets and unanswered questions seemed to press down on her, making the familiar journey feel like scaling a mountain. Samantha hesitated at the door, her key poised in the lock. Through the thin walls, she could hear the muffled sounds of Emily moving about inside. For a moment, Samantha was transported back in time to countless afternoons coming home from school, knowing that Emily would be there with a warm smile and a listening ear. The contrast between those comforting memories and the turmoil of her current emotions was almost too much to bear. Before she could decide whether to enter or flee, the decision was made for her. The door swung open, revealing Emily's concerned face. "Samantha, there you are, sweetheart. I've been so worried. How did the interview go?" Emily's voice was warm and full of genuine concern, just as it had always been. Samantha felt a lump form in her throat. How could she look at this woman, the only mother she had ever known, and see a potential kidnapper? The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. It didn't go as expected," Samantha managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. She stepped into the apartment, avoiding Emily's gaze. Emily's brow furrowed with concern. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. These things happen, though. There will be other opportunities. Why don't you sit down and I'll make us some tea?" As Emily bustled off to the kitchen, Samantha sank onto the worn but comfortable couch. Her eyes roamed the familiar living room, taking in the faded photographs on the walls, the mismatched furniture collected over years of thrift store finds. Every corner of this space held memories of the life she and Emily had built together. Could it all be based on a lie? Emily returned with 2 steaming mugs of chamomile tea, Samantha's favorite for calming her nerves. As she handed one to Samantha, her gaze fell on the amethyst necklace. For a split second, Samantha saw something flicker in Emily's eyes. Fear, guilt, before it was quickly masked by her usual warm smile. "That necklace looks lovely on you," Emily said, her voice carefully neutral. "I'm glad you decided to wear it today." Samantha's fingers instinctively went to the pendant. "Mom," she began, the word feeling strange on her tongue now. "Where did this necklace really come from?" Emily's smile faltered for a moment. She sat down next to Samantha, cradling her own mug of tea. "I've told you, sweetheart. It was a gift from a dear friend, long ago. Why do you ask?" The evasiveness in Emily's tone only served to heighten Samantha's suspicions. She took a deep breath, knowing that her next words could change everything. "Because today, at my interview, I met a man who recognized this necklace. He said it belonged to his daughter who disappeared 19 years ago." The sound of Emily's mug shattering on the floor echoed through the small apartment. Tea splashed across the worn carpet, but neither woman moved to clean it up. Emily's face had gone pale, her eyes wide with an emotion Samantha couldn't quite place. Shock, terror, guilt. "Samantha," Emily said, her voice trembling, "I don't know what that man told you, but his name is James Taylor," Samantha interrupted, her voice gaining strength. "He's the CEO of Taylor and Associates, and he thinks I might be his long-lost daughter, Isabella." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily seemed to shrink into herself, her usual confident demeanor crumbling before Samantha's eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "Oh, Samantha, I never wanted you to find out like this." The admission hit Samantha like a physical blow. She stood up abruptly, putting distance between herself and the woman she had called mother for so long. "So it's true," Samantha's voice cracked with emotion. "Everything you've ever told me about my past, about my adoption, it's all been a lie." Emily reached out towards Samantha, her eyes brimming with tears. "No, sweetheart, please. It's not that simple. You have to understand." But Samantha wasn't ready to understand. The hurt and betrayal coursing through her veins drowned out any desire for explanations. "How could you, Mom? How could you keep something like this from me? Did you really kidnap me?" Emily flinched at the accusation, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "Samantha, please, I love you. Everything I've ever done has been to protect you. You have to believe me." But Samantha was beyond hearing. The walls of the apartment felt like they were closing in on her. She needed to get out, to breathe, to think. Without another word, she turned and fled the apartment, ignoring Emily's anguished calls behind her. Samantha ran down the stairs and out onto the street, her vision blurred by tears. She had no destination in mind. She just knew she needed to get away. As she walked aimlessly through the city, her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. On one hand, there was anger and betrayal. How could Emily, the woman who had raised her, loved her, supported her through every challenge, have kept such a monumental secret? The foundation of trust upon which their relationship was built seemed to crumble with each step Samantha took. But beneath the anger, there was a deeper, more painful emotion: fear. Fear of losing the only family she had ever known. Fear of what this revelation meant for her identity, her past and her future. Who was she, if not Samantha Davis, Emily's adopted daughter? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the city streets, Samantha found herself in a small park. She collapsed onto a bench, physically and emotionally exhausted. Pulling out her phone, she saw dozens of missed calls and messages from Emily. Each one sent a fresh wave of pain through her heart. Almost without thinking, Samantha's fingers found James Taylor's business card in her pocket. Before she could second-guess herself, she dialed the number. "Mr. Taylor, it's Samantha," she said when he answered, her voice hoarse from crying. I think I'm ready for that DNA test." On the other end of the line, James's voice was filled with a mixture of concern and barely contained hope. "Of course, Samantha. I can arrange everything for tomorrow if you're comfortable with that. Are you all right? Do you need anything?" Samantha hesitated, realizing she had nowhere to go. The thought of returning to the apartment she shared with Emily was unbearable. "Actually, Mr. Taylor, I don't suppose you could recommend a hotel. I don't think I can go home tonight." There was a pause on the other end of the line. When James spoke again, his voice was gentle. "Samantha, I have a guest room. If you're comfortable with it, you're more than welcome to stay here. No pressure, of course, but the offer is there." Samantha closed her eyes, weighing her options. Staying with a virtual stranger, a man who might be her biological father, was far from ideal, but the alternative of facing Emily or spending the night alone in a hotel room seemed even worse. "Thank you, Mr. Taylor," she said finally. "I appreciate the offer. If it's not too much trouble." "Not at all," James replied, the relief evident in his voice. "I'll text you the address. Take your time and please, call me James." As Samantha ended the call, she felt a strange mix of emotions: fear, uncertainty, and a tiny glimmer of hope. Whatever happened next, there was no going back. The life she had known was forever changed. Across town, in a lavish penthouse apartment, James Taylor put down his phone, his hand trembling slightly. He walked to a bookshelf and pulled out a well-worn photo album. Opening it to a familiar page, he traced his finger over a photograph of a smiling little girl with green eyes flecked with gold. "Could it really be you, Isabella?" he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "After all these years." As the city lights began to twinkle in the gathering darkness, three individuals, Samantha, Emily, and James, found themselves at a crossroads. Each of them carried the weight of the past, the pain of secrets long held, and the uncertain promise of what the future might hold. Little did they know that their lives were about to become inexorably intertwined in ways none of them could have imagined. As Samantha made her way to James's apartment, Emily sat alone in her empty home, and James prepared to welcome the young woman who might be his long-lost daughter. The stage was set for revelations that would shake them all to their very cores. The truth, as they would soon discover, was far more complex and painful than any of them could have anticipated. And as the night settled over the city, the shadows of the past loomed large, threatening to engulf them all in a web of lies, love, and long-buried secrets. The soft glow of dawn was just beginning to paint the sky when Samantha stirred from her restless sleep. For a moment, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings of James Taylor's luxurious guest room, she felt a surge of panic. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back, and with them, a fresh wave of emotional turmoil. Samantha sat up slowly, her eyes scanning the opulent room. Everything here was a stark contrast to the modest apartment she shared with Emily. The thought of her adoptive mother sent a pang through Samantha's heart, a mixture of love, betrayal, and confusion that threatened to overwhelm her. A soft knock at the door pulled Samantha from her reverie. "Samantha," James's voice called softly. "Are you awake? I've made some breakfast if you're feeling up to it." Taking a deep breath to steady herself, Samantha replied, "Yes, I'll be out in a minute. Thank you." As she dressed in the clothes she had hastily packed the night before, Samantha caught sight of her reflection in the full-length mirror. The young woman staring back at her seemed like a stranger, familiar features now cast in a new light by the possibility of a different identity. The amethyst necklace, which she hadn't had the heart to remove, glimmered at her throat, a constant reminder of the mystery surrounding her past. When Samantha emerged from the guest room, she found James in the spacious kitchen, setting out plates of eggs, toast, and fruit. The domestic scene felt surreal. This man, who just yesterday had been a stranger, could potentially be her biological father. "Good morning," James said, his smile warm but tinged with nervousness. "I hope you slept well. Please, help yourself." Samantha settled at the kitchen island, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee helping to ground her in the present moment. "Thank you," she said softly, reaching for a piece of toast. "For everything." James sat across from her, his blue eyes so different from her own, studying her face intently. "Samantha," he began, his voice gentle, "I know this is an incredibly difficult and confusing time for you. I want you to know that, whatever the outcome of the DNA test, you're not alone in this." The sincerity in his voice brought unexpected tears to Samantha's eyes. She blinked them back, focusing on spreading jam on her toast. "And I appreciate that," she managed to say. "It's just everything I thought I knew about myself, about my life. It's all been turned upside down. I don't know who to trust anymore." James nodded, understanding etched on his face. "I can only imagine how overwhelming this must be for you, but I promise you, Samantha, we will get to the truth. And whatever that truth may be, we'll face it together." As they ate in companionable silence, Samantha's mind drifted to Emily. She had turned off her phone the night before, unable to bear the constant stream of messages and missed calls. The guilt of shutting out the woman who had raised her ward with the anger and betrayal she felt at the possibility of Emily's deception. "The lab will be ready for us at 10 a.m., James said, breaking into Samantha's thoughts. We don't have to go through with this if you're not ready. It's entirely your decision." Samantha met his gaze, seeing the mixture of hope and fear in his eyes. She realized that as difficult as this was for her, it must be equally challenging for James to have lost a child and then, after so many years, to be faced with the possibility of her return. It was almost too much to comprehend. "No," Samantha said, her voice stronger than she felt. I need to know the truth. We both do. James nodded, relief evident in his expression. As they prepared to leave for the lab, Samantha felt a strange calm settle over her. Whatever the results might be, at least she would have answers. The ride to the lab was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. As they entered the sterile building, Samantha felt her heart begin to race. This simple test had the power to redefine her entire existence. The process itself was quick and painless, a simple cheek swab for both Samantha and James. As the lab technicians sealed their samples, Samantha felt as if she were standing on the edge of a precipice, about to take a leap into the unknown. The results should be ready in a few days, the technician informed them. We'll call you as soon as they're available. As they left the lab, James turned to Samantha. What would you like to do now? We could get some lunch, or if you prefer some time alone, I completely understand. Samantha hesitated, torn between the desire for solitude and the strange comfort she found in James's presence. Before she could respond, her phone, which she had reluctantly turned back on, began to buzz insistently. Emily's name flashed on the screen, along with notifications of dozens of missed calls and messages. Samantha stared at the phone, her hand trembling slightly. James noticed her distress. Is it Emily? He asked gently. Samantha nodded, unable to speak. Samantha, James said, his voice careful, I know this is difficult, but I think you should talk to her. Whatever the truth may be, Emily has been a part of your life for a long time. She deserves a chance to explain. The rational part of Samantha knew James was right, but the emotional turmoil within her made the prospect of facing Emily daunting. I don't know if I'm ready, she whispered. James placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. You don't have to do it alone. If you'd like, we could meet Emily together. Neutral ground, somewhere public. I'll be there for support, but you can lead the conversation. Samantha considered the offer. The thought of confronting Emily was terrifying, but having James there as a buffer made it seem more manageable. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. Okay, let's do it. With shaking hands, Samantha dialed Emily's number. The phone barely rang once before Emily answered, her voice frantic with worry. Samantha, oh, thank God. Are you all right? Where are you? I'm okay, Mom, Samantha said, the familiar term feeling strange on her tongue now. Can we meet? There's a lot we need to talk about. Emily's relief was palpable even through the phone. Of course, sweetheart. Anything you want. Where and when? They agreed to meet at a small cafe near the lab in an hour. As Samantha ended the call, she felt a mixture of dread and determination. This conversation would be one of the most difficult of her life, but it was necessary. James squeezed her shoulder gently. You're incredibly brave, Samantha. Remember, I'll be right there with you. As they made their way to the cafe, Samantha's mind raced with questions. What would Emily say? How much did she really know about Samantha's past? And most importantly, could their relationship survive the truth, whatever it might be? The cafe came into view, and with it, the sight of Emily pacing anxiously outside. Samantha's steps faltered for a moment, overwhelmed by the conflicting emotions surging through her. James's steady presence beside her gave her the strength to continue forward. Emily's eyes widened as she saw Samantha approaching with James. A flicker of recognition, followed by fear, crossed her face. In that moment, Samantha knew that whatever Emily was about to say would change everything. As they reached the cafe entrance, Emily's gaze darted between Samantha and James, her expression a mixture of love, fear, and resignation. Samantha, she said softly, her voice trembling. I suppose it's time I told you everything. The three of them entered the cafe, the cheerful chatter of other patrons a stark contrast to the tension surrounding their small group. As they settled into a corner booth, Samantha felt as if she were standing on the threshold of a new chapter in her life. Whatever truths were about to be revealed, there would be no going back. Emily took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving Samantha's face. Sweetheart, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to know that everything I've done, I did out of love for you. But you're right. It's time you knew the truth about where you came from and who you really are." As Emily began her story, Samantha braced herself for revelations that would reshape her understanding of her past, her identity, and the complex web of relationships that had brought her to this moment. The truth, as she was about to discover, was far more complicated and heart-wrenching than she could have ever imagined. The bustling cafe seemed to fade into the background as Emily began her story, her voice low and filled with a mix of emotions: regret, fear, and an undercurrent of fierce protectiveness that Samantha had always associated with her adoptive mother. "It all started nearly 20 years ago," Emily began, her eyes fixed on the table, unable to meet Samantha's gaze. "I was working as a nanny for a wealthy family in the Hamptons, the Taylors." At this, James inhaled sharply, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the table. Samantha felt a chill run down her spine, realizing that the story she was about to hear would impact not just her, but the man sitting beside her as well. Emily continued, her voice shaking slightly. "I loved my job, and I adored little Isabella. She was such a bright, beautiful child. But as time went on, I started to notice things that worried me." Samantha leaned forward, her heart pounding. "What kind of things?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily's eyes flicked briefly to James before returning to Samantha. There were arguments, tensions in the household. Mrs. Taylor, she had problems, addiction issues, and Mr. Taylor, she paused, glancing at James. He was always working, rarely home. Isabella was caught in the middle of it all. James's face had gone pale, his expression a mixture of pain and dawning realization. I had no idea," he murmured. "One night," Emily continued, her voice growing stronger as she delved deeper into the past, "things came to a head. There was a terrible argument. Mrs. Taylor was in a state, and she lashed out at Isabella. I intervened, took Isabella out of the house to keep her safe. I only meant to take her for a little while, just until things calmed down." Samantha felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. The implications of what Emily was saying were staggering. "But you didn't bring her back," she said, her voice hollow. Emily shook her head, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "I couldn't. The next morning, I saw the news. There had been a terrible accident. Mrs. Taylor, she didn't survive. And in that moment, I made a decision that would change all of our lives forever. You took me," Samantha whispered, the truth of it settling over her like a heavy blanket. "You kidnapped me!" Emily reached across the table, her hands seeking Samantha's, but Samantha pulled away. "Sweetheart, please understand. I thought I was protecting you. The media frenzy, the trauma of losing your mother, I convinced myself that giving you a fresh start, away from all of that, was the best thing for you." James, who had been listening in stunned silence, finally spoke. His voice was raw with emotion. "How could you? Do you have any idea what you've done? The years of pain, of not knowing." Emily turned to him, her expression pleading. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Taylor. I never meant for it to go on for so long." But as the years passed, it became harder and harder to tell the truth. Samantha became my whole world, and the thought of losing her. Samantha stood abruptly, overwhelmed by the revelations. "I need some air," she said, her voice shaking. Without waiting for a response, she hurried out of the cafe, leaving Emily and James staring after her. Outside, Samantha gulped in the cool air, her mind reeling. Everything she thought she knew about herself, about her life, had been built on a lie. She was Isabella Taylor, not Samantha Davis. The woman she had called mother for nearly 2 decades had stolen her from her real family. As she paced the sidewalk, trying to make sense of her turbulent emotions, she heard the cafe door open behind her. Turning, she saw James approaching cautiously. "Samantha, or should I say Isabella," he said softly, his voice filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Hearing her real name spoken aloud sent a shiver through her. I don't know who I am anymore," she admitted, her voice breaking. James took a step closer, his hands open in a gesture of peace. "You're my daughter," he said simply. "Whatever name you choose to go by, whatever life you've lived up until now, that fundamental truth remains. You're my little girl, and I've missed you every day for the past 19 years. The raw emotion in his voice broke something inside Samantha. Tears she had been holding back began to fall freely. Without thinking, she stepped forward into James's embrace, feeling for the first time the comfort of her biological father's arms around her. As they stood there on the busy sidewalk, both crying openly, Emily emerged from the cafe. Her face was a mask of pain and regret as she watched the reunion she had prevented for so long. Samantha pulled away from James, wiping her eyes as she turned to face Emily. The woman who had raised her, loved her, shaped her into the person she was today, and also the woman who had stolen her from her real family. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," Samantha said, her voice trembling, "but I also can't deny that you've been my mother in every way that matters. I need time to process all of this, to figure out who I really am." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand, sweetheart. I'll give you all the time and space you need. Just know that I love you, and everything I did, misguided as it was, came from a place of love." As the three of them stood there, the weight of past decisions and future uncertainties hanging heavily in the air, Samantha felt as if she were standing at a crossroads. Her past, both the one she had known and the one that had been hidden from her, stretched out behind her. Ahead lay a future full of unknowns, of relationships to rebuild and an identity to rediscover. James placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure this out together," he said softly. "All of us, if you're willing." Samantha nodded, feeling a strange mix of fear and hope. As she looked between James and Emily, she realized that her journey of self-discovery was only just beginning. The truth had finally come to light, but its implications would take time to fully understand and accept. As they made their way back into the cafe to continue their conversation, Samantha touched the amethyst pendant at her throat, a tangible link between her past and her present. Whatever came next, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The path ahead would be challenging, filled with difficult conversations and emotional revelations, but for the first time in her life, Samantha felt ready to face the truth of who she really was. Little did she know that this was just the beginning. The revelations of Emily's past actions would set off a chain reaction, bringing to light long-buried secrets and testing the bonds of family, love, and forgiveness in ways none of them could have anticipated. In the days following the explosive revelations at the cafe, Samantha found herself in a state of emotional limbo. She had taken a leave of absence from her job, unable to focus on anything but the seismic shifts occurring in her personal life. The small apartment she had shared with Emily now felt like a minefield of memories, each familiar object a reminder of the life she had lived under false pretenses. James had offered her continued use of his guest room, an offer Samantha had gratefully accepted. The luxury of the penthouse apartment still felt foreign to her, but it provided a neutral space where she could begin to process the overwhelming changes in her life. On a crisp morning, about a week after the meeting at the cafe, Samantha sat on the balcony of James's apartment, nursing a cup of coffee and staring out at the city skyline. The DNA test results had come back the day before, confirming what they already knew in their hearts. She was indeed Isabella Taylor, James's long-lost daughter. The sound of the balcony door sliding open broke Samantha from her reverie. James stepped out, his own coffee mug in hand, his expression a mixture of concern and cautious hope. "Good morning," he said softly, taking a seat beside her. "How are you feeling today?" Samantha managed a small smile. "Honestly, I'm not sure. It's like I'm living someone else's life, or maybe I've been living someone else's life all along, and I'm only now waking up to my real one." James nodded, understanding in his eyes. It's a lot to process. I want you to know that there's no pressure, Isabella, or Samantha if you prefer. We can take this as slowly as you need. The use of both her names made Samantha's heart clench. I don't even know what to call myself anymore, she admitted. Samantha feels like a lie, but Isabella, I don't know her. I don't remember being her. James reached out, hesitantly placing his hand over hers. Names are just labels, sweetheart. Who you are, your kindness, your strength, your resilience, that's what matters. And those qualities shine through no matter what name you go by. Tears pricked at Samantha's eyes. The genuine affection in James's voice was still new to her, but she found herself craving it more and more. "Thank you," she whispered. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the city come to life below them. Finally, Samantha spoke again, voicing the question that had been plaguing her. "What happens now?" James took a deep breath. "Well, legally, we have some decisions to make. Emily's actions, they were criminal, regardless of her intentions. We need to decide if we want to pursue legal action." The thought made Samantha's stomach churn. Despite everything, the idea of Emily facing criminal charges was difficult to contemplate. "And if we don't," she asked, "then we focus on healing," James said simply. "On getting to know each other, on building a relationship, and on helping you figure out who you want to be moving forward." As they continued to talk, mapping out possibilities for the future, Samantha felt a spark of hope ignite within her. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, she felt like she had a choice in shaping her own destiny. Later that day, Samantha made a difficult decision. She called Emily, asking to meet at their old apartment. It was time to face the life she was leaving behind. Walking into the familiar space felt surreal. Emily was there, looking tired and anxious. The air between them was thick with unspoken emotions. "I'm moving out," Samantha said, without preamble. I need space to figure things out." Emily nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I understand, Samantha. Isabella, I'm so sorry for everything." As Samantha began to pack her belongings, the weight of 19 years of memories pressed down on her. Each item she placed in her suitcase felt like a piece of her old self being packed away. In her bedroom, Samantha paused at her dresser. There, in a small jewelry box, lay a collection of birthday cards from Emily. Despite everything, she couldn't bring herself to leave them behind. They were a testament to the love that had existed between them, complicated as it was. As she zipped up her suitcase, Emily appeared in the doorway. "And I know I have no right to ask," she said softly, "but will I ever see you again?" Samantha turned to face the woman who had raised her, feeling a complex mix of love, anger, and grief. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "I need time, Emily, to process, to heal, to figure out who I am without the lies." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. Just know that I love you. I always have, and I always will. No matter what name you go by." As Samantha left the apartment, she felt as if she were closing a chapter of her life. The future stretched out before her, uncertain but full of possibilities. Back at James's penthouse, Samantha found her biological father on the phone, his voice raised in agitation. As she set down her bags, she caught snippets of the conversation. "No, absolutely not. This is a private family matter. I won't have you turning this into a media circus." James ended the call abruptly, turning to Samantha with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry you had to hear that. The press has gotten wind of the story. They're clamoring for interviews, exclusive rights to our reunification story." Samantha felt a wave of panic. The idea of her personal turmoil becoming public fodder was horrifying. "What are we going to do?" James's expression hardened with determination. "Or we're going to protect you. I've already contacted my lawyers. We'll issue a statement asking for privacy, but beyond that, we don't owe the world any explanations. This is our family's business, no one else's." The word family sent a jolt through Samantha. It was still strange to think of James as family, but she found herself grateful for his protectiveness. As the day wore on, Samantha and James continued to navigate their new reality. They shared stories, James telling her about her early childhood, Samantha cautiously sharing snippets of her life with Emily. It was a delicate dance, both of them acutely aware of the years lost between them. That night, as Samantha lay in bed, her mind swirling with the events of the past week, she realized that her journey was far from over. The truth had come to light, but its repercussions were still unfolding. She had a biological father to get to know, a past to reconcile, and an identity to rebuild. As she drifted off to sleep, her hand instinctively went to the amethyst pendant still hanging around her neck. It was a tangible link between her past and her present, a reminder of the complex web of love, lies, and family that had brought her to this point. Little did Samantha know that the revelations of the past week were just the beginning. As she slept, events were already in motion that would bring new challenges, unexpected allies, and deeper secrets to light. The story of Isabella Taylor, once lost and now found, was far from over. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions and adjustments for Samantha. Each day brought new challenges as she navigated her evolving relationship with James, grappled with her feelings towards Emily, and tried to reconcile her two identities, Samantha Davis and Isabella Taylor. One crisp autumn morning, Samantha found herself in James's home office, surrounded by boxes of old family photos and mementos. James had suggested they go through them together, hoping to help Samantha reconnect with her early childhood memories. As they sifted through the photographs, James's voice was thick with emotion. "This was your 5th birthday party," he said, holding up a picture of a beaming little girl with familiar green eyes, blowing out candles on a pink cake. "You were so excited about your new bicycle. You insisted on riding it around the house for days." Samantha studied the photo intently, searching for any flicker of recognition. The little girl in the picture was undeniably her, but she felt disconnected from the memories, as if watching scenes from a stranger's life. "I wish I could remember," she said softly, a hint of frustration in her voice. James squeezed her shoulder gently. "It's okay. The memories may come back in time, and if they don't, we'll make new ones." As they continued to explore the boxes, Samantha's hand brushed against a small, ornate wooden box. Curious, she opened it, revealing a collection of letters tied with a faded ribbon. "What are these?" she asked, holding up the bundle. James's expression changed, a mix of sadness and hesitation crossing his features. Those are letters from your mother, Evelyn." Samantha's breath caught in her throat. In all the turmoil of discovering her true identity, she had given little thought to the mother she had lost so long ago. Can I read them?" James nodded, his voice soft. "Of course, they're yours." With trembling hands, Samantha untied the ribbon and began to read. The letters spanned several years, chronicling the ups and downs of Evelyn and James's relationship, their joy at Isabella's birth, and increasingly, Evelyn's struggles with addiction. As Samantha read, tears streaming down her face, she began to piece together a picture of the woman who had given birth to her. Evelyn's words were by turns loving, desperate, and remorseful. The pain and conflict in her letters were palpable. One passage, in particular, stood out. "My dearest James, I know I've made so many mistakes. The drugs, the arguments, the times I've let you and our precious Isabella down. But please believe me when I say I'm trying. Every day is a battle, but the thought of our little girl gives me strength. I want to be better. For her. For us. I just need more time." Samantha looked up at James, her eyes brimming with questions. She was trying to get better. James nodded, his own eyes moist with unshed tears. "Evelyn had her demons, but she loved you fiercely. She was in and out of rehab several times. The night of the accident, she had just completed another program. We thought things were finally turning around." The weight of this new information settled heavily on Samantha's shoulders. The tragedy of her mother's death, the lost potential for recovery and reconciliation, added another layer of complexity to her already tumultuous emotions. As they continued to go through the letters, a name caught Samantha's eye. "David?" she read aloud, her brow furrowing. "Who's David?" James's expression darkened. David was a complicated figure in our lives. He was my business partner, and at one point, a close friend. But he and Evelyn had a history. Before she and I got together, their relationship was always a source of tension. Samantha's mind raced, remembering the conversation she had overheard between Emily and someone named David shortly after her confrontation with James. Could it be the same person? Before she could voice her thoughts, James's phone rang. He excused himself to take the call, leaving Samantha alone with the letters and her swirling thoughts. As she continued to read, a picture began to form, one of a troubled family dynamic, of love overshadowed by addiction and jealousy, and of a little girl caught in the middle of it all. Samantha felt a deep ache for the child she had been, and for the parents who had loved her but been unable to protect her from the chaos of their lives. James returned, his expression grave. "That was my lawyer," he said, running a hand through his hair. "It seems Emily has decided to come forward with her side of the story. She's given an interview to a local news station. It's set to air tomorrow night." Samantha felt as if the ground had dropped out from beneath her. The idea of her personal trauma being broadcast for public consumption was horrifying. "Can we stop it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. James shook his head. "It's already recorded, but don't worry, we'll handle this. I've already called our PR team. We'll issue a statement, control the narrative as much as we can." As they discussed their options, Samantha's mind kept returning to the letters, to the mentions of David, and to the overheard conversation with Emily. There were still so many pieces of the puzzle missing, so many questions unanswered. That night, as Samantha lay in bed, unable to sleep, she made a decision. It was time to take control of her own story. She needed answers, and she knew just where to start looking for them. Quietly, she slipped out of bed and made her way to James's office. The letters were still there, scattered across the desk. Samantha began to read them more carefully, looking for any mention of David, any clue that might help her understand the full story of her past. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, Samantha sat back, her mind reeling from what she had discovered. The letters hinted at a complex web of relationships and secrets that went far beyond what James had told her. She knew now that finding the truth would require more than just reconnecting with her past. It would mean unraveling a tangle of lies, jealousies, and hidden agendas that had shaped her life from the very beginning. With renewed determination, Samantha began to formulate a plan. She would find David, confront Emily about the overheard conversation, and piece together the full story of her past, no matter where it led her. As she quietly made her way back to her room, Samantha felt a mix of fear and excitement. The journey ahead would be challenging, but for the first time since discovering her true identity, she felt a sense of purpose. She was no longer just a passive player in her own life story. She was taking control, ready to face whatever truths lay hidden in the shadows of her past. Little did she know that her quest for answers would uncover secrets far more shocking than she could have imagined, testing the boundaries of love, loyalty, and forgiveness in ways she never thought possible. The morning sun had barely risen when Samantha slipped out of James's penthouse, leaving only a brief note explaining her need for some time alone. Her mind raced with the information gleaned from Evelyn's letters, each revelation adding another layer to the complex tapestry of her past. Her first stop was the small cafe where she had arranged to meet Michael, the private investigator James had initially hired to uncover the truth about her adoption. After James had called off the investigation, Samantha had secretly reached out to Michael, hoping his skills could help her piece together the missing parts of her story. Michael was already waiting when she arrived, a thick folder on the table in front of him. "Miss Taylor," he greeted her, his voice low and professional. "I found some information that might interest you." For the next hour, Samantha pored over the documents Michael had compiled, police reports, financial records, and even some grainy surveillance photos painted a picture far more complex than she had imagined. David Jennings, Michael explained, pointing to a photo of a handsome man in his 50s. "He was your father's business partner, but their relationship went sour about a year before your disappearance. There were allegations of embezzlement, though nothing was ever proven." Samantha's eyes widened as she recognized the man from one of the old family photos she had seen with James. "And his connection to my mother." Michael's expression turned grim. "They had a relationship before your mother married your father. It seems it didn't end as cleanly as everyone thought. There are records of multiple phone calls between them in the months leading up to your disappearance." As Samantha digested this information, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Emily's interview was about to air. With a mix of dread and determination, she pulled up the live stream on her tablet. Emily's face filled the screen, her eyes red-rimmed but her voice steady. "I know what I did was wrong," she began, "but you have to understand. I loved that little girl from the moment I met her. When I saw the chaos and pain in that household, I convinced myself I was doing the right thing by giving her a fresh start." Samantha listened, her emotions a turbulent mix of anger, sympathy, and confusion. As Emily continued to speak, however, something caught Samantha's attention. "I never meant for it to go on for so long," Emily said, her voice breaking. "But David said it was too late, that we'd all go to jail if the truth came out. He said he'd take care of everything, make sure we were safe." Samantha's head snapped up, her eyes meeting Michael's. "David?" she whispered. "She's talking about David Jennings." Michael nodded grimly. "It seems Mr. Jennings is more involved in this than we thought." With renewed urgency, Samantha and Michael dived back into the files. As they connected the dots, a chilling picture began to emerge. David Jennings hadn't just been a bystander in her disappearance, he had been an orchestrator. Financial records showed large sums of money transferred to offshore accounts around the time of Samantha's disappearance. Phone records indicated frequent communication between David and Emily in the weeks leading up to and following the event. "But why?" Samantha asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would he do this?" Michael's expression was grave. "From what I've gathered, it was a combination of factors. Revenge against your father for pushing him out of the business, lingering feelings for your mother, and possibly an attempt to cover up his own financial misdeeds. By creating chaos in your family, he stood to gain both emotionally and financially." The weight of this revelation hit Samantha like a physical blow. Her disappearance, the years of separation from her real family, the pain caused to both James and Emily. It had all been part of a calculated plan by a man she barely remembered. As she sat there, trying to process this new information, Samantha's phone rang. It was James, his voice frantic. "Isabella, where are you? Have you seen the interview? We need to talk." Samantha took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she knew would be a difficult conversation. "Dad," she said, the word still feeling strange on her tongue, "there's something you need to know about David Jennings." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. When James finally spoke, his voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. "Come home, Isabella. It's time we put all our cards on the table." As Samantha gathered her things, thanking Michael for his help, she felt a strange mix of dread and determination. The truth was finally coming to light, but she knew that facing it would require strength she wasn't sure she possessed. The ride back to James's penthouse felt like the calm before a storm. Samantha's mind raced with questions, scenarios, and fears. How would James react to the news about David? What other secrets might come to light? And most importantly, how would these revelations change the fragile relationships she had been building? As the elevator doors opened to the penthouse, Samantha stepped out, ready to face whatever came next. The truth, no matter how painful, was the key to understanding her past and shaping her future. With each step, She felt herself growing stronger, more determined to uncover every last secret that had shaped her life. Little did she know that the biggest revelations were yet to come, and that the truth would test the bonds of family, love, and forgiveness in ways she could never have imagined. As Samantha stepped into the penthouse, the tension in the air was palpable. James stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his posture rigid, hands clasped behind his back. He turned as she entered, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "Isabella," he said, his voice strained. "I'm glad you're here. We have much to discuss." Samantha took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. "Yes, we do. But first, I need you to listen to what I've discovered." For the next hour, Samantha laid out everything she had learned from Michael's investigation and her own research. She watched as James's expression shifted from shock to anger to a deep, profound sadness. When she finished, James sank onto the sofa, looking suddenly older and more vulnerable than Samantha had ever seen him. "I suspected David might have been involved," he said quietly, "but I never imagined the extent of his betrayal." Samantha sat beside him, cautiously placing a hand on his arm. "Dad, why didn't you tell me about your history with David, about his connection to Mom?" James sighed heavily. "I wanted to protect you, Isabella. I thought if I could shield you from the ugliness of the past, it would be easier for you to adjust to your new life. But I see now that I was wrong. You deserved the whole truth from the beginning." As they talked, James filled in more details about his complicated history with David Jennings. The two had been close friends and successful business partners until David's risky ventures and alleged embezzlement had forced James to push him out of the company. "I never knew about his continued involvement with your mother," James admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "Evelyn and we had our problems, but I never imagined she would turn to David behind my back." Samantha's mind reeled with the implications. Do you think Mom was involved in my disappearance?" James shook his head vehemently. "No, absolutely not. Whatever her faults, Evelyn loved you more than anything in this world. Her death, it was a genuine accident. David must have seized the opportunity in the chaos that followed." As they continued to talk, piecing together the complex web of relationships and motivations that had led to Samantha's abduction, a new resolve began to form within her. "We need to confront David," she said, her voice steady and determined. "And Emily, we need to hear the whole truth from everyone involved." James nodded, a mix of pride and concern in his eyes. "You're right. But Isabella, are you sure you're ready for this? It won't be easy." Samantha stood, squaring her shoulders. "I've spent my whole life not knowing who I really am. It's time I took control of my own story." Over the next few days, Samantha and James worked with their lawyers and Michael to build a case against David Jennings. They also reached out to Emily, arranging a meeting where all parties could lay their cards on the table. The day of the confrontation arrived with a sense of foreboding. Samantha stood in the conference room of James's lawyer's office, her heart pounding as she waited for David and Emily to arrive. Emily entered first, looking pale and nervous. Her eyes met Samantha's, filled with a mixture of love, guilt, and fear. Before either could speak, David Jennings walked in, his confident demeanor faltering slightly as he took in the serious faces around the room. What's this about, James?" David asked, his voice carrying a forced casualness. "Your message said it was urgent." James's voice was cold as he replied, "It's time for the truth, David. All of it. About Isabella's disappearance, about your involvement with Evelyn, about the money you embezzled from our company." David's facade cracked, his eyes darting between James, Samantha, and Emily. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Emily, what have you been saying?" Emily, who had been silent until now, stood up straighter, a new resolve in her eyes. "I'm done lying, David. For Isabella's sake, for my own conscience. It's time everyone knew the truth." What followed was a grueling hours-long session of revelations, accusations, and confessions. "David, realizing he was cornered, eventually broke down and admitted to his role in orchestrating Samantha's abduction. He had manipulated Emily's genuine concern for the child's welfare, using it as a cover for his own schemes of revenge and financial gain. Emily, tears streaming down her face, filled in the gaps of the story. Her initial act of taking Isabella had been born of genuine concern, but David had convinced her that returning the child would result in jail time for them both. Over the years, he had used threats and manipulation to keep her silent. As the full picture emerged, Samantha felt a whirlwind of emotions. Anger at the deceptions that had shaped her life, sympathy for Emily's misguided but well-intentioned actions, and a deep, searing pain for the years lost with her real family. When it was over, David was led away by the authorities, facing charges of kidnapping, fraud, and embezzlement. Emily, though not absolved of her role, was treated with more leniency due to her cooperation and the circumstances of her involvement. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Samantha found herself emotionally drained, but also strangely liberated. The truth, painful as it was, had finally come to light. As she stood between James and Emily, she realized that her journey of self-discovery was far from over, but for the first time, she felt equipped to face whatever came next. "What happens now?" she asked, looking between the two people who, in very different ways, had shaped her life. James squeezed her shoulder gently. "Now we heal together, if that's what you want." Emily, her voice small but hopeful, added, "I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I hope that someday we can find a way forward." Samantha took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her past and the potential of her future. I think I'd like that. It won't be easy, but I want to try." As they left the office, stepping out into the bright afternoon sun, Samantha felt a sense of possibility she hadn't experienced before. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with difficult conversations and emotional hurdles. But for the first time in her life, she felt truly seen, truly known. She was Isabella Taylor and Samantha Davis, a product of both nature and nurture, shaped by love and lies, loss and redemption. And now, with the truth finally unveiled, she was ready to write the next chapter of her story on her own terms. Little did she know that this resolution was just the beginning of a new journey, one that would test her newfound strength and challenge her understanding of family, forgiveness, and identity in ways she could never have anticipated. The weeks following the confrontation were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, emotional conversations, and tentative steps toward healing. Samantha found herself at the center of a complex web of relationships, each one requiring careful navigation and reassessment. One crisp autumn morning, Samantha sat in a quiet corner of a local park, waiting for Emily to arrive. They had agreed to meet on neutral ground, away from the memories associated with their old apartment or James's penthouse. As she watched families and joggers pass by, Samantha felt a mix of anxiety and hope flutter in her chest. Emily appeared, looking nervous but determined. As she sat down beside Samantha, the weight of their shared history hung heavy between them. "Thank you for meeting me," Emily began, her voice soft. "I know this isn't easy." Samantha nodded, taking a deep breath. "It's not, but I think it's necessary for both of us." Over the next hour, they talked more openly than they ever had before. Emily shared details about her early days as a nanny, her growing concerns about the Taylor household, and the fateful decision that had changed all their lives. "I want you to know," Emily said, her eyes brimming with tears, "that every moment of love between us was real. My methods were wrong, terribly wrong, but my love for you was never a lie." Samantha felt her own eyes welling up. "I know," she said softly. "That's what makes this so hard. I love you, Emily. You raised me, supported me, shaped me into who I am, but I'm also so angry and hurt by the deception." As they continued to talk, Samantha realized that forgiveness would be a journey, not a destination. It would take time to rebuild trust, to redefine their relationship in light of the truth. But she also knew that Emily's love, misguided as it had been, was an integral part of her life that she wasn't ready to let go of entirely. Meanwhile, Samantha's relationship with James was evolving in its own complex way. They spent time together almost daily, sharing meals, looking through old photos, and slowly getting to know each other as adults. One evening, as they sat in James's study, Samantha broached a subject that had been weighing on her mind. "Dad," she began, the words still feeling new on her tongue, "I've been thinking about my name." James looked up, his expression curious. "Oh, I've been Samantha for so long. It feels like a part of me. But Isabella, that's who I was born to be. I'm not sure how to reconcile the two." James smiled gently. "A name is just a label, sweetheart. It doesn't define who you are. But if you're looking for a solution, why not use both? Isabella Samantha Taylor. It honors all parts of your journey." The suggestion resonated with Samantha. It felt like a tangible way to acknowledge both her past and her present, a bridge between her two identities. As the legal proceedings against David Jennings progressed, Samantha found herself having to confront her feelings about her biological mother, Evelyn. James had given her more of Evelyn's letters and diaries, and reading them was an emotional roller coaster. One night, unable to sleep, Samantha found herself in the kitchen, poring over one of Evelyn's journals. James, hearing her move about, joined her. "You remind me of her, you know," he said softly, "and your mother. She had the same determination, the same spark in her eyes when she was focused on something." Samantha looked up, her expression a mix of curiosity and sadness. "Tell me more about her, the real her, not just the struggles." For hours, they sat there, James sharing stories of Evelyn's kindness, her quick wit, her passion for art. Samantha listened, piecing together an image of the mother she had lost, feeling a connection to her that transcended time and separation. As dawn broke, Samantha made a decision. "I want to visit her grave," she said. I think it's time." The visit to the cemetery was a profound experience. Standing before Evelyn's headstone, Samantha felt a surge of emotions. Grief for the relationship they never had, anger at the circumstances that had torn them apart, and a strange sense of peace in finally being able to say goodbye. As the weeks turned into months, Samantha, now going by Isabella to most, but still Samantha to those closest to her, began to carve out a new life for herself. She started therapy to help process her complex emotions, began building a career in child advocacy inspired by her own experiences, and slowly learned to balance her relationships with both James and Emily. It wasn't always easy. There were difficult days, arguments, and moments of doubt. But there were also moments of profound connection, of laughter, of family dinners that brought together the strange patchwork of people that made up her world. 1 year after the truth had come to light, Isabella stood on the balcony of her own apartment, a space that was truly hers, neither James's penthouse nor Emily's modest home. As she looked out over the city, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known was possible. She was Isabella Samantha Taylor, daughter of James and Evelyn, raised by Emily. She was a survivor, a fighter, a young woman still discovering who she could be now that she knew the truth of where she came from. As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Isabella smiled to herself. Her journey was far from over, but for the first time, she felt truly ready to embrace whatever the future might hold. With the love of her complex, imperfect family behind her, she was ready to write the next chapter of her story, one that was entirely her own. Little did she know that life still had surprises in store, challenges that would test her newfound strength, and revelations that would shake the foundations of everything she thought she knew. But that, as they say, is a story for another day. As Isabella settled into her new life, balancing her relationships with James and Emily while forging her own path, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to her story. This intuition proved correct one crisp autumn morning, almost 2 years after the initial revelations about her true identity. Isabella was at her office, deeply engrossed in a case file for her child advocacy work, when her phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. Hesitantly, she answered, "Hello, is this Isabella Taylor?" A woman's voice asked, sounding nervous and uncertain. "Yes, this is she. Who am I speaking with?" There was a pause. Then, "My name is Sophia Reeves. I think I might be your sister." Isabella felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. "I'm sorry. What? I don't have a sister. Half-sister, actually," Sophia clarified. "We share the same father. James Taylor is my biological father, too." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Isabella tried to process this information. With shaking hands, she arranged to meet Sophia in person, her mind racing with questions and possibilities. Later that day, Isabella sat in a quiet cafe, her heart pounding as she waited for Sophia to arrive. When a young woman with familiar blue eyes, James's eyes, walked in, Isabella knew immediately that this was no mistake. Sophia, it turned out, was born just a year after Isabella's disappearance. Her mother, Claire, had been a colleague of James's who had comforted him during the dark days following the loss of his daughter and wife. Their brief relationship had resulted in Sophia's birth, but Claire had chosen to raise Sophia on her own, never telling James about his child. "My mom passed away 6 months ago," Sophia explained, her voice thick with emotion. "That's when I found the letters she'd written but never sent, explaining everything to me. I've been trying to work up the courage to reach out ever since." As the sisters talked, piecing together their shared history and marveling at the twists of fate that had brought them together, Isabella felt a mix of emotions she couldn't quite name. Joy at discovering family she never knew she had, anger at the secrets that had kept them apart, and a deep, aching sadness for the years they had lost. When Isabella called James to share the news, his reaction was one of shock, disbelief, and then a cautious hope. A DNA test confirmed what they already knew in their hearts. Sophia was indeed James's daughter. The revelation of Sophia's existence sent ripples through the fragile peace Isabella had established in her life. James was overjoyed to discover he had another daughter, but racked with guilt over the years he had missed. Emily, still working to rebuild her relationship with Isabella, felt a renewed sense of insecurity, fearing this new family connection would push her further to the margins of Isabella's life. As for Isabella herself, she found herself grappling with complex emotions. On one hand, she was thrilled to have a sister, someone who could understand the unique challenges of navigating a relationship with James. On the other hand, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy. Sophia had grown up knowing her mother, free from the trauma of abduction and lost identity that had shaped Isabella's life. Despite these challenges, Isabella was determined to embrace this new chapter in her life. She and Sophia began spending time together, getting to know each other and marveling at the similarities they shared despite their different upbringings. One evening, as they sat in Isabella's apartment sharing a bottle of wine, Sophia turned to her sister with a serious expression. "There's something else you should know," she said, her voice hesitant. "When I was going through Mom's things after she passed, I found some documents about Evelyn." Isabella felt her heart rate quicken. "What kind of documents?" Sophia took a deep breath. "Medical records, mostly, and a letter from Evelyn to Mom. It was written just a few weeks before the accident." With trembling hands, Isabella accepted the folded paper Sophia pulled from her bag. As she read, tears began to stream down her face. The letter revealed a truth that would once again reshape her understanding of her past. Evelyn had been pregnant at the time of her death. The medical records confirmed it. Isabella would have had a younger sibling, if not for the tragic accident that claimed her mother's life. This revelation hit Isabella like a physical blow. The loss of her mother, already a painful wound, now felt even more profound. She mourned not just for the relationship she had lost, but for the sibling she would never know. As Isabella processed this new information, she realized that her journey of self-discovery was far from over. Each revelation seemed to unlock new questions, new avenues of her past to explore. In the days that followed, Isabella found herself re-evaluating everything she thought she knew about her family history. She dove back into Evelyn's letters and diaries with renewed vigor, searching for any clues she might have missed. She had long conversations with James, piecing together a more complete picture of her parents' relationship and the circumstances surrounding her mother's death. Through it all, Isabella leaned on the support system she had built. James, Emily, her therapist, and now Sophia. Each played a unique role in helping her navigate the complex emotions stirred up by these new revelations. As she stood on the balcony of her apartment one evening, watching the sun set over the city, Isabella reflected on the twists and turns her life had taken. She was no longer just Isabella or Samantha, daughter of James and Evelyn or Emily. She was a sister, a survivor, a complex individual shaped by a history more intricate than she could have ever imagined. The journey ahead was still uncertain, filled with potential challenges and undiscovered truths. But Isabella felt stronger now, more equipped to face whatever revelations might still be waiting in the shadows of her past. With her newfound family by her side, she was ready to continue unraveling the mystery of her identity, one thread at a time. As night fell over the city, Isabella made a silent promise to herself and to the family she had lost and found. She would honor their memory by living fully, loving deeply, and never stopping in her quest for truth and self-understanding. Little did she know that the biggest revelation of all was still to come, a truth that would challenge everything she thought she knew about her identity and the very fabric of her existence. As Isabella continued to navigate her complex family dynamics and uncover more about her past, an unexpected twist emerged that would shake the very foundations of her identity. It began innocently enough. In an effort to learn more about her genetic heritage and potential health risks, Isabella decided to take a commercial DNA test. She saw it as a way to connect more deeply with her biological roots and perhaps uncover some benign family secrets. When the results arrived, however, they brought with them a bombshell that no one could have anticipated. Isabella stared at her computer screen, her mind struggling to comprehend what she was seeing. According to the test results, her DNA didn't match James Taylor's to the degree expected for a biological father and daughter. In fact, it showed no significant relation at all. Her first instinct was to assume there had been a mistake. Surely the test was faulty, or there had been a mix-up at the lab. But as she dug deeper into the results, comparing them with the previous DNA test that had confirmed her identity as Isabella Taylor, a chilling realization began to dawn on her. The two tests didn't match at all. With shaking hands, Isabella called James. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling, "I think we need to talk. And we need to do another DNA test." The next few days were a blur of medical appointments, blood draws, and agonizing waits. Isabella, James, and even Sophia underwent comprehensive genetic testing, desperate for answers. When the results finally came in, they were nothing short of earth-shattering. The new tests confirmed what the commercial DNA test had suggested. Isabella was not biologically related to James Taylor, nor was she related to Sophia. The implications were staggering. If James wasn't her biological father, then who was? And more disturbingly, if she wasn't the real Isabella Taylor, then who was she? As the family grappled with this shocking revelation, they brought in Michael, the private investigator who had helped uncover the truth about Isabella's abduction. His task now was to unravel this new mystery. Michael's investigation led them down a rabbit hole of hospital records, birth certificates, and long-buried secrets. What he uncovered was almost too incredible to believe. It turned out that there had been a mix-up at the hospital the day Isabella, or rather the girl they thought was Isabella, was born. Another baby girl had been born on the same day, at the same hospital. Somehow, in the chaos of the maternity ward, the babies had been switched. The real Isabella Taylor, it seemed, had been raised by another family, unaware of her true identity, and the young woman who had spent the last few years rebuilding her life as Isabella was, in fact, someone else entirely. The revelation sent shockwaves through everyone involved. James was devastated, grappling with the loss of the daughter he thought he had found, while also feeling guilty for the pain this would cause the young woman he had come to love as his own. Emily, who had raised Isabella from childhood, found her already complex emotions thrown into further turmoil. As for Isabella herself, or whoever she truly was, the news was nothing short of catastrophic. Just when she thought she had finally uncovered the truth about her identity, everything had been thrown into question once again. Who was she really? Who were her biological parents? And what did this mean for the relationship she had built with James, Emily, and Sophia? In the midst of this emotional maelstrom, a new challenge emerged. The family of the real Isabella Taylor had been located. They were understandably shocked and confused by the news, but also eager to meet the daughter they had unknowingly lost all those years ago. As the legal and emotional implications of this discovery began to unfold, Isabella, as she still thought of herself, found herself at a crossroads. She had spent so much of her life searching for her true identity, and now that search had led her to an entirely unexpected place. The days and weeks that followed were filled with difficult conversations, legal consultations, and soul-searching. Isabella had to confront questions she never thought she'd face. Did she want to meet her biological family? Did she want to know the name she'd been given at birth? And how could she maintain the relationship she had built with James, Emily, and Sophia when the very foundation of those relationships had been built on a mistake? As she stood on her balcony one evening, looking out over the city that had been the backdrop to so much of her journey, Isabella felt a strange mix of emotions: fear of the unknown, grief for the identity she was losing, but also a glimmer of hope. After all, she had faced seemingly insurmountable challenges before and had emerged stronger. She realized that her true identity wasn't defined by her DNA or her name. It was defined by the experiences she had lived, the relationships she had built, and the person she had become through it all. With this realization came a sense of resolve. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever truths were yet to be uncovered, she would face them head-on. She had done it before, and she would do it again. As the sun set on this chapter of her life, Isabella, or whoever she truly was, prepared herself for the next phase of her journey. A journey that would lead her to new discoveries, new relationships, and ultimately to a deeper understanding of what it truly means to know oneself. Little did she know that this twist in her story was just the beginning of an even more complex and emotional journey, one that would test the very limits of her resilience, her capacity for love, and her understanding of what truly makes a family. The revelation of Isabella's true genetic identity plunged everyone involved into a maelstrom of emotions and ethical dilemmas. As the dust began to settle, Isabella found herself navigating uncharted waters, trying to balance her established relationships with the pull of her newly discovered biological roots. The first major hurdle came in the form of a meeting with her biological parents, the Hendersons. Sarah and Michael Henderson had raised the real Isabella Taylor, now known as Olivia, believing her to be their own daughter. The meeting was fraught with tension and conflicting emotions. As Isabella sat across from the Hendersons in a neutral conference room, she felt an odd sense of déjà vu. Hadn't she been here before, facing strangers who were supposed to be family? We don't know what to say," Sarah Henderson began, her voice trembling. We've spent the last 28 years raising a daughter we thought was ours, and now," Michael Henderson, his face a mask of conflicted emotions, added, And now we find out our biological daughter has been out there all this time, living a completely different life. Isabella nodded, understanding their turmoil all too well. I know this is overwhelming, she said softly. Believe me, I understand better than most. But I want you to know that I'm not here to disrupt your lives or take anything away from the daughter you've raised. The conversation that followed was emotional and complex. The Hendersons shared stories of their life, showing Isabella photos of the childhood she might have had. In turn, Isabella opened up about her own journey, the challenges she had faced, and the family she had built. As the meeting drew to a close, Sarah Henderson reached out and gently took Isabella's hand. "We don't expect you to suddenly become our daughter," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "But if you're open to it, we'd like the chance to get to know you." Isabella felt a lump form in her throat. "I'd like that," she whispered. In the weeks that followed, Isabella found herself trying to balance her established relationships with her budding connection to the Hendersons. James, struggling with his own sense of loss, showed remarkable grace. "You'll always be my daughter," he told her one evening, his voice thick with emotion. "DNA doesn't change the love I feel for you or the years we've shared." Emily, too, reaffirmed her commitment to Isabella. "I raised you," she said firmly. "That bond doesn't disappear because of a blood test." Even Sophia, who had only recently entered Isabella's life, stood by her. "Hey, as far as I'm concerned, you're still my sister," she said with a wry smile. "We've been through too much together to let this change things." But while Isabella was grateful for their support, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. She found herself questioning every aspect of her identity. Was her personality shaped by nature or nurture? Would she have been a different person if she'd been raised by the Hendersons? These questions led Isabella to seek out Olivia, the woman who had been raised as Isabella Taylor. Their first meeting was surreal, like looking into a funhouse mirror. They shared similar features, but their mannerisms, speech patterns, and personalities were distinctly different. "It's strange," Olivia mused during their third meeting. "Oh, we could have had each other's lives, but I don't regret the life I've lived, even if it wasn't the one I was born into. Do you?" Isabella considered the question carefully. "No," she said finally. "Despite all the challenges, I wouldn't trade my experiences. They've made me who I am." This realization was a turning point for Isabella. She began to see that her identity wasn't something fixed or defined solely by genetics or upbringing. It was a fluid, ever-evolving aspect of herself, shaped by her experiences, choices, and relationships. With this new perspective, Isabella made a bold decision. She chose to legally change her name to Sophia Isabella Henderson Taylor, honoring all aspects of her complex identity. As she stood before a judge, officially declaring her new name, Isabella felt a sense of peace wash over her. She glanced at the courtroom gallery, where James, Emily, the Hendersons, Sophia, and Olivia all sat, a testament to the unconventional but loving family she had built. Outside the courthouse, as they all gathered for a celebratory lunch, Isabella raised her glass in a toast. "To family," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Not just the one we're born into, but the one we choose, and the one that chooses us." As the others echoed her toast, Isabella felt a profound sense of gratitude. Her journey had been far from easy, filled with twists and turns she could never have anticipated. But it had led her to this moment, surrounded by people who loved her for who she was, regardless of DNA or family trees. Looking around the table at the smiling faces of her eclectic family, Isabella realized that she had finally found what she had been searching for all along, a sense of belonging that transcended biology, a love that defied conventional definitions, and an identity that was uniquely, undeniably her own. As they left the restaurant, stepping out into the bright afternoon sun, Isabella felt ready for whatever the future might hold. She had weathered storms that would have broken many, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more self-assured than ever before. Little did she know that life still had a few surprises in store. Challenges that would test the strength of her newfound identity and the bonds of her unconventional family. But that, as they say, is a story for another day. As Isabella, now officially Sophia Isabella Henderson Taylor, settled into her new identity and expanded family dynamics, she couldn't shake the feeling that there were still unanswered questions lurking in the shadows of her past. This intuition proved correct when, 6 months after legally changing her name, she received an unexpected letter that would once again upend her world. The letter arrived on a crisp autumn morning, its yellowed envelope and faded postmark immediately catching Isabella's attention. It was postmarked nearly 3 decades ago, addressed to Emily Davis at their old apartment. Somehow, after all these years, it had finally found its way to Isabella. With trembling hands, Isabella opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, the ink slightly smudged, but still legible. As she began to read, her breath caught in her throat. "My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, then something has gone terribly wrong. I pray this letter never reaches you, that I'll be able to tell you all of this in person. But if fate has other plans, you deserve to know the truth. Isabella is in danger. David isn't who he claims to be. The accident that killed Evelyn wasn't an accident at all. There's so much more at stake than you know. I've hidden evidence that could expose everything. Look for the blue jay where the sun sets on the longest day. Keep Isabella safe. Trust no one. With love and regret, Claire." Isabella read the letter 3 times, her mind reeling. Claire, that was the name of Sophia's mother, the woman who had had a brief relationship with James after Evelyn's death. But this letter predated that relationship by years. How was Claire connected to Emily? And what did she know about Isabella's past? Realizing the magnitude of this discovery, Isabella knew she couldn't handle it alone. She called an emergency family meeting, summoning James, Emily, Sophia, and even Olivia, who had become an unexpected ally in navigating their shared, convoluted history. As Isabella read the letter aloud to the stunned group, the room fell into a heavy silence. Emily, her face pale, was the first to speak. I never received this letter," she said, her voice shaking. "Claire and I were friends years ago, before any of this happened, but we lost touch. I had no idea she knew anything about Isabella's situation." James leaned forward, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This changes everything we thought we knew. If Evelyn's death wasn't an accident." "And what about David?" Sophia interjected. "We thought his involvement ended with the kidnapping scheme, but this suggests something much bigger." Isabella nodded, her mind racing. "We need to find the evidence Claire mentioned. The blue jay where the sun sets on the longest day. It has to be a clue to its location." The group spent hours brainstorming, poring over maps and old photographs, trying to decipher Claire's cryptic message. It was Olivia who finally made the breakthrough. "Wait," she said, pulling out her phone. "There's a hiking trail in the state park near where Isabella disappeared. It's called Blue Jay Ridge, and there's an observation point at the western end of the trail, perfect for watching the sunset." A plan quickly took shape. Isabella, James, and Sophia would go to Blue Jay Ridge to search for the hidden evidence. Emily and Olivia would stay behind to dig deeper into Claire's background and her connection to the case. The next day, as the sun began its descent towards the horizon, Isabella found herself standing at the edge of Blue Jay Ridge, the vast expanse of forest stretching out before her. The beauty of the scene was at odds with the tension she felt, knowing that somewhere nearby lay answers to questions that had haunted her for years. As they searched the area, Isabella's mind wandered to the twists and turns her life had taken. From Samantha to Isabella to Sophia Isabella, each name representing a different chapter of her journey. And now, here she was, on the verge of uncovering yet another layer of her complex history. Just as the sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Sophia's voice cut through the air. "I found something!" Isabella and James rushed over. There, nestled in a hollow at the base of an old oak tree, was a weathered metal box. With shaking hands, Isabella lifted the lid. Inside were documents, photographs, and a small USB drive. As they began to sift through the contents, the true scope of what Claire had uncovered became clear. There was evidence of a vast conspiracy involving David, high-ranking officials, and a shadowy organization. The documents suggested that Evelyn had stumbled upon this conspiracy, and her death had been orchestrated to keep her quiet. But the most shocking revelation came from a DNA test report tucked away at the bottom of the box. According to the results, Isabella, the real Isabella Taylor, was not James's biological daughter. As the implications of this discovery sank in, Isabella felt as if the ground had dropped out from beneath her feet. Everything she thought she knew about her past, about her identity, had been built on a foundation of lies and half-truths. Looking up at James, she saw her own shock and confusion mirrored in his eyes. Sophia stood nearby, her hand over her mouth, trying to process this latest twist in their family saga. As the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, Isabella realized that their journey was far from over. The evidence they had uncovered would lead them down a path filled with danger, betrayal, and long-buried secrets. But as she stood there, surrounded by the family she had chosen, Isabella felt a surge of determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever truths were yet to be uncovered, they would face them together. For Isabella had learned that true family transcended blood and DNA. It was forged in shared experiences, in love and support given freely, in the choice to stand by one another no matter what. As they made their way back down the trail, the weight of their discovery heavy on their shoulders, Isabella knew that the coming days would test them all. But she also knew that they had the strength to weather whatever storms lay ahead. For in the end, it wasn't the name she carried or the DNA in her cells that defined her. It was the love she gave and received, the choices she made, and the legacy she would leave behind. And with that knowledge burning bright within her, Isabella was ready to face whatever the future might hold. Little did they know that the revelations at Blue Jay Ridge were just the beginning. The truth they were about to uncover would shake the foundations of their world and force them to question everything they thought they knew about family, identity, and the very nature of truth itself. The drive back from Blue Jay Ridge was tense, the silence in the car broken only by the occasional rustle of papers as Isabella, James, and Sophia pored over the documents they had uncovered. The USB drive remained unopened, a digital Pandora's box that none of them quite dared to open just yet. As they pulled up to James's penthouse, they were met by Emily and Olivia, both looking anxious and excited. We found something," Emily said breathlessly as soon as they were inside. "You're not going to believe this." Olivia pulled out a stack of old photographs. "We were digging through Emily's old things, trying to find any connection to Claire when we came across these." The photos showed a younger Emily, with Claire and another woman who bore a striking resemblance to Evelyn Taylor, but it was the man standing with them that caught everyone's attention, David Jennings. Yet this was taken years before Isabella's kidnapping, Emily explained, her voice shaking. "I had forgotten all about it. We were all part of a volunteer program at the local hospital. That's where I met Claire and David." James leaned in, studying the photo intently. "And Evelyn, how does she fit into this?" Emily shook her head. "I don't remember her being part of the program, but look at the date on the back of the photo." Isabella flipped the picture over. The date was exactly 9 months before her birth. The implications hung heavy in the air. If Evelyn had known Emily, Claire, and David before Isabella's birth, and if the DNA test results they had just discovered were accurate, then the web of connections and secrets ran far deeper than any of them had imagined. "We need to see what's on that USB drive," Sophia said, breaking the tense silence. With trepidation, they gathered around James's computer as he inserted the drive. What they found was a digital treasure trove of information, emails, financial records, and most disturbingly, surveillance footage. One video, dated just days before Evelyn's death, showed her in a heated argument with David and an unidentified man in a suit. Though there was no audio, it was clear from their body language that the conversation was intense and threatening. "Oh my God," James whispered, his face pale. Evelyn knew. She knew about whatever conspiracy was going on, and they silenced her. As they continued to dig through the files, a clearer picture began to emerge. The shadowy organization hinted at in Claire's letter appeared to be a network of powerful individuals involved in everything from insider trading to political manipulation. David Jennings was a key player, using his business connections to facilitate their operations. But the most shocking revelation came in an encrypted file that took Sophia, with her background in computer science, hours to crack. When she finally broke through, her gasp drew everyone's attention. "You're not going to believe this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. According to this, the real Isabella Taylor, the baby born to Evelyn and James, died shortly after birth due to a congenital heart defect, but the organization covered it up. They switched the baby with another infant born the same day, an infant whose mother had died in childbirth. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Isabella, or whoever she truly was, felt as if the ground had disappeared from beneath her feet. Not only was she not James's daughter, but she wasn't even the person she had thought she was for the past few years. "But why?" Emily asked, breaking the heavy silence. "Why go to all this trouble?" James, his face a mask of shock and grief, spoke up. "Because of me, my company, my political connections. They needed a hold over me, a way to manipulate me. What better way than through a child I believed was mine?" As the night wore on, they continued to unravel the threads of the conspiracy. It became clear that Isabella's kidnapping had not been a simple crime of opportunity, but a calculated move in a much larger game. Emily's role, her connection to Claire and David, the years of deception, all of it had been orchestrated to keep the truth buried. By the time dawn broke, casting a pale light over the city, the group was exhausted but determined. They had uncovered a truth more complex and far-reaching than any of them could have imagined. But with that truth came danger. "We need to be careful," James warned, his voice grave. "The people behind this, they're powerful, connected. If they realize we know the truth," Isabella nodded, feeling the weight of their discovery settling on her shoulders. "So what do we do now?" Olivia, who had been quiet for much of the night, spoke up. "We fight back. We use this information to expose them, to bring them down." As they began to formulate a plan, Isabella felt a strange mix of emotions: fear at the dangers that lay ahead, anger at the lies that had shaped her life, but also a fierce determination. She may not know who she truly was by birth, but she knew who she was by choice: a fighter, a survivor, and part of a family bonded by love and shared adversity. Looking around at the faces of her chosen family, James, Emily, Sophia, and Olivia, Isabella knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The road to truth and justice would be fraught with danger, but for the first time in her life, Isabella felt truly equipped to face it. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the city, Isabella and her family began to prepare for the fight of their lives. Little did they know that their quest for truth would lead them into the heart of a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of power, testing their resolve, their loyalties, and their very understanding of family and identity. The next chapter of their journey was about to begin, and it promised to be the most challenging yet. In the weeks following their shocking discoveries, Isabella and her unconventional family found themselves thrust into a world of clandestine meetings, encrypted communications, and constant vigilance. The weight of the conspiracy they had uncovered pressed down on them, a constant reminder of the dangers they faced. James Zyde, leveraging his business acumen and connections, began to quietly investigate the reach of the shadowy organization. He discovered links to high-ranking politicians, judges, and corporate leaders, each compromised or complicit in their own way. The depth of the corruption was staggering. Meanwhile, Sophia put her tech skills to work, creating secure channels for communication and digging deeper into the digital evidence they had uncovered. Her days were a blur of code and data, each breakthrough bringing them closer to understanding the full scope of the conspiracy. Emily and Olivia focused on piecing together the human element of the story. They pored over old records, tracked down former colleagues from the hospital volunteer program, and slowly began to construct a timeline of events leading up to Isabella's birth and subsequent kidnapping. As for Isabella herself, she threw herself into the role of coordinator, bringing together the threads of their investigation. Her background in child advocacy proved unexpectedly useful as she navigated the complex web of legal and ethical issues surrounding their case. One rainy afternoon, as they gathered in James's now fortified penthouse to share their findings, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. "I think I found her," Olivia said, her voice a mix of excitement and trepidation. "Isabella's birth mother. My birth mother. Her real birth mother." The room fell silent as Olivia pulled up a file on her laptop. "Her name is Maria Suarez. She was an undocumented immigrant who died in childbirth at the same hospital where I was born. The dates match perfectly with what we found in Claire's files." Isabella felt a surge of emotions, grief for the mother she never knew, anger at the circumstances of her birth, and a strange sense of relief at finally knowing a piece of her true origin. "There's more," Olivia continued. "Maria had a sister, Elena. She still lives in the city. I think we need to talk to her." The decision to reach out to Elena Suarez was not made lightly. They knew that every move they made could potentially alert the organization to their activities, but the need for answers, for a connection to Isabella's true past, outweighed the risks. A week later, Isabella found herself sitting in a small, tidy apartment in a working-class neighborhood, face-to-face with the aunt she never knew she had. Elena, a petite woman with kind eyes and graying hair, listened in stunned silence as Isabella recounted the twisted tale of her life. When Isabella finished speaking, Elena reached out and took her hand, tears streaming down her face. "I always wondered," she said softly in accented English. "Maria was so excited about her baby. When they told me she had died, and the baby too, something never felt right. But I had no proof, no way to investigate." As they talked, Elena shared stories of Maria, her dreams, her struggles, her fierce love for the child she carried. For Isabella, it was like discovering a missing piece of herself, a connection to a heritage she had never known. Before they left, Elena pressed a small, worn photograph into Isabella's hand. It showed a young woman with Isabella's eyes and smile, her hand resting protectively on her swollen belly. "This is your mother," Elena said, "and that is you. Never forget where you came from, Mija." The meeting with Elena marked a turning point in their investigation. Armed with this new personal connection, Isabella felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about uncovering a conspiracy anymore. It was about justice for Maria, for Evelyn, for all the lives that had been manipulated and destroyed by the organization's machinations. As they intensified their efforts, however, it became clear that they weren't the only ones making moves. Strange cars began appearing outside their homes and workplaces. Sophia detected multiple attempts to breach their secure communications. And then came the warning. A single black rose delivered to each of their doorsteps, a clear message that their activities had not gone unnoticed. The tension reached a breaking point one night when James received an anonymous phone call. The distorted voice on the other end was chilling in its directness. "Stop digging, or the next funeral will be your own." In the emergency meeting that followed, the gravity of their situation became clear. They were in too deep to simply walk away, but moving forward meant putting everything, their safety, their freedom, possibly their lives, on the line. As they debated their next move, Isabella stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. In her hand, she held the photo of Maria, her thumb tracing the outline of her birth mother's face. She thought of Elena, of the family she had lost, and the family she had found. She thought of all the lies and manipulation that had shaped her life, and of the truth that was finally within reach. Turning back to the room, Isabella's voice was steady and determined. "We can't stop now. We owe it to ourselves, to Maria, to Evelyn, to everyone who's been hurt by this conspiracy. Whatever happens, we face it together." One by one, the others nodded their agreement. The die was cast. They would push forward, knowing that the path ahead was fraught with danger, but driven by an unshakable commitment to the truth. As they began to outline their plan of action, none of them could have predicted the storms that lay ahead. The organization, feeling threatened, was about to unleash its full power against them. Loyalties would be tested, sacrifices would be made, and the very foundations of their world would be shaken. But in that moment, united in purpose and bound by love, Isabella and her family stood ready to face whatever came their way. The final battle for truth and justice was about to begin, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Little did they know that the greatest challenges, the most heart-wrenching revelations, and the true test of their bonds were yet to come. The endgame was approaching, and with it, a reckoning that would change all of their lives forever. The next few weeks unfolded in a whirlwind of activity as Isabella and her family raced against time to gather enough evidence to expose the conspiracy. They worked tirelessly, knowing that each passing day brought them closer to both revelation and danger. Sophia's tech skills proved invaluable as she managed to hack into several key databases, uncovering a trail of financial transactions that linked high-ranking officials to the shadowy organization. James used his business connections to quietly investigate some of the companies involved, piecing together a complex web of shell corporations and money laundering operations. Emily and Olivia continued their ground-level investigations, interviewing former hospital staff and tracking down other families who might have been affected by the organization's activities. Their work was painstaking and often frustrating, but slowly they began to build a clearer picture of the conspiracy's reach. Isabella, drawing on her legal background, worked on compiling all the evidence into a cohesive case that could stand up in court. She also maintained contact with Elena, who provided invaluable insights into Maria's life and the circumstances surrounding Isabella's birth. But as their investigation deepened, so did the threats against them. Attempts to intimidate them escalated from veiled warnings to more overt actions. Sophia's apartment was broken into, though nothing was taken. James's car was tampered with, nearly causing an accident. It was clear that the organization was growing desperate to stop them. The turning point came on a rainy night in late autumn. Isabella was working late in her office, poring over documents, when she received an urgent call from Sophia. "Isabella, you need to get out of there now." Sophia's voice was tense with fear. "I've detected a breach in our security system. They know where you are and they're coming." Heart pounding, Isabella grabbed her laptop and the most crucial documents, shoving them into her bag. As she rushed to the elevator, she could hear the sound of heavy footsteps echoing in the stairwell. The next few hours were a blur of fear and adrenaline. Isabella managed to evade her pursuers, thanks in large part to Sophia's real-time guidance through the city's CCTV network. When she finally reached the safe house they had prepared for such an emergency, she found the others already there, their faces etched with worry and relief. "They came for all of us," James explained grimly. "We barely made it out in time." As the reality of their situation sank in, Isabella realized that they had crossed a point of no return. They were now fugitives, hunted by a powerful and ruthless organization that would stop at nothing to keep its secrets buried. In the days that followed, they were forced to operate entirely in the shadows. Sophia set up a mobile command center, constantly moving to avoid detection. James reached out to trusted contacts in the media and law enforcement, laying the groundwork for when they would eventually go public with their evidence. It was during this time of crisis that Isabella found an unexpected source of strength in her connection to Maria. Late one night, unable to sleep, she sat looking at the photo Elena had given her. As she traced her birth mother's features, so similar to her own, Isabella felt a surge of determination. She was her mother's daughter, a fighter, a survivor. This renewed resolve came just in time, for their greatest challenge was yet to come. Through a complex sting operation involving careful misdirection and a fair amount of risk, they managed to lure David Jennings to a meeting. The confrontation was tense and emotional. David, cornered and desperate, initially tried to bluff his way out, but faced with the weight of evidence against him and the united front presented by Isabella and her family, he finally broke. "You don't understand," he said, his voice a mixture of defiance and desperation. "This goes deeper than you could possibly imagine. There are people involved, people you don't want to cross." "We're way past that point, David," Isabella replied coldly. "It's time for the truth, all of it." What followed was a confession that shook them to their core. David revealed the full extent of the conspiracy, a multi-decade operation involving child trafficking, illegal adoptions, and the manipulation of powerful figures through blackmail and coercion. The switch at Isabella's birth, Evelyn's murder, the staged kidnapping, all were part of a larger, more sinister plan. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. As David's confession unfolded, it became clear that there was another player in this twisted game, someone whose identity would shake the very foundations of everything they thought they knew. "It was James," David said, his eyes fixed on Isabella. "James Taylor was part of it from the beginning. He's not a victim in this. He's one of the masterminds." The room fell into stunned silence. All eyes turned to James, whose face had gone deathly pale. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, no one moved or spoke. Then, slowly, James raised his head. His eyes, filled with a mixture of pain, regret, and something else, something harder to define, met Isabella's gaze. "It's true," he said softly. "Ah, God help me, it's true." In that moment, Isabella felt as if the world had dropped out from beneath her feet. Everything she thought she knew, every truth she had clung to, seemed to crumble away. As the implications of this betrayal began to sink in, she realized that the final battle for truth and justice would be more personal and painful than she could have ever imagined. The storm they had been racing against was now upon them, and at its eye was a truth so devastating it threatened to tear apart the very family bonds that had given them strength. As night fell over the city, Isabella and her shattered family faced their darkest hour, knowing that the choices they made in the coming days would determine not just their own fates, but potentially the course of justice itself. The endgame had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The revelation of James's involvement in the conspiracy sent shockwaves through the group. The safe house, once a haven, now felt like a pressure cooker of emotions. Betrayal, anger, confusion, and fear permeated the air. Isabella stood by the window, her mind reeling as she tried to process this new, devastating truth. Behind her, she could hear the heated voices of the others as they confronted James. "How could you?" Emily's voice was raw with emotion. "All these years, everything we've been through, it was all a lie." James sat heavily in a chair, his face a mask of regret and resignation. "It wasn't all a lie," he said softly. "The love I have for all of you, that's real. It's always been real." Sophia, her voice trembling with anger, cut in. "But you were part of this from the beginning. The kidnapping, the cover-ups, everything." James nodded slowly. "It started long before any of you were born. I was young, ambitious, and I made choices, terrible choices that I've regretted every day since." As the confrontation continued, Isabella found herself detaching from the scene, her mind racing through every interaction, every moment she had shared with James since discovering her true identity. Had it all been an act, part of some grand manipulation? Finally, unable to bear it any longer, Isabella turned from the window. I need to hear it all, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. From the beginning, no more lies, no more half-truths. We deserve to know everything. James looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and something that looked almost like relief. You're right, he said. It's time for the whole truth. Over the next several hours, James laid bare the full extent of his involvement in the conspiracy. He spoke of his early days in business, of being approached by powerful figures with promises of success and influence. He detailed how he had been gradually drawn into a web of illegal activities, each compromise leading to a deeper entanglement. When Evelyn became pregnant, James continued, his voice heavy with regret, I saw it as a way out. I thought I could leave it all behind, start fresh, but they wouldn't let me go. And then when you, Isabella, died shortly after birth, they saw an opportunity. Isabella felt a chill run down her spine as James described the plan to switch the babies, to use her as a pawn in their larger game of manipulation and control. I told myself it was for the best, James said, unable to meet anyone's eyes, that I could give you a better life, protect you. But in reality, I was just too much of a coward to face the consequences of my actions. As James's confession unfolded, detailing years of deception and manipulation, Isabella felt as if she were watching the collapse of everything she had believed about her life. Yet paradoxically, she also felt a strange sense of clarity. For the first time, all the pieces of her fragmented past were falling into place. When James finally fell silent, the room was thick with tension. No one spoke for several long moments, each lost in their own thoughts and emotions. It was Olivia who broke the silence. So what do we do now? She asked, her voice small but determined. Do we turn him in? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Isabella looked around at the faces of her family. Emily, who had raised her with love despite the lies. Sophia, who had become the sister she never knew she needed. Olivia, bound to her by a shared history of deception and discovery. And James, the man who had been both her salvation and her betrayer. In that moment, Isabella realized that the choice before them was about more than just justice or retribution. It was about the very nature of family, forgiveness and redemption. We finish what we started, Isabella said finally, her voice firm. We expose the whole conspiracy, bring down the entire organization, including, she paused, meeting James's gaze, including your role in it. James nodded, a mix of resignation and resolve on his face. I'll turn myself in, he said. Testify against the others. It's the least I can do to try and make amends. The decision made, they spent the next several days preparing for the endgame. Sophia worked tirelessly to compile all their evidence into an airtight case. Emily and Olivia reached out to trusted contacts in law enforcement and the media. Isabella, drawing on her legal background, prepared statements and planned their approach to going public. Throughout it all, James cooperated fully, providing insider information that filled in crucial gaps in their understanding of the conspiracy. Despite the betrayal, Isabella found herself feeling a complex mixture of emotions towards him. Anger, certainly, but also a grudging respect for his willingness to face the consequences of his actions. As they prepared to go public with their evidence, Isabella took a moment alone to look at the photo of Maria, her birth mother. I hope I'm doing the right thing, she whispered to the image. I hope I'm making you proud. The day they chose to reveal everything dawned bright and clear. As Isabella stood before a crowd of reporters, flanked by her family and supported by a team of lawyers and law enforcement officials, she felt a sense of finality. This was the moment when all the lies, all the secrets, would finally be exposed to the light of day. Taking a deep breath, Isabella began to speak, her voice clear and unwavering as she unraveled the tangled web of deceit that had shaped not just her life, but the lives of countless others. As she spoke, she could feel the weight of years of uncertainty and confusion lifting from her shoulders. The story she told captivated the nation, sparking outrage, investigations, and a wave of revelations as others came forward with their own experiences. In the days and weeks that followed, the full extent of the conspiracy was laid bare, leading to arrests, resignations, and a fundamental shaking of the established order. For Isabella and her family, the aftermath was a time of profound reckoning and reorganization. James, true to his word, turned himself in and provided testimony that was crucial in bringing down key figures in the organization. His actions, while not erasing his past crimes, did much to redeem him in the eyes of those he had betrayed. As the dust began to settle, Isabella found herself facing a future she had never imagined, one where she finally knew the full truth of her origins and her place in the world. The road ahead would not be easy, as she and her family worked to rebuild trust and redefine their relationships in light of all that had been revealed. But as she stood on the balcony of her apartment, watching the sun set over the city, Isabella felt a sense of peace she had never known before. She was no longer a pawn in someone else's game, no longer defined by the lies and manipulations of others. She was, at last, truly herself, Isabella Maria Suarez, daughter of Maria, raised by Emily, sister to Sophia and Olivia, shaped by a past both painful and profound. The journey had been long and fraught with challenges, but as Isabella looked to the future, she felt ready to face whatever came next. For she had learned that true strength comes not from the absence of struggle, but from the courage to face it head-on, to seek the truth no matter the cost, and to choose love and forgiveness even in the face of betrayal. As night fell over the city, Isabella smiled to herself, feeling for the first time in her life that she was exactly where she was meant to be, not because of fate or manipulation, but because of the choices she had made and the family she had forged through adversity and love. The end of this chapter was just the beginning of a new story, one that Isabella was finally free to write for herself. In the months following the explosive revelations and the subsequent legal proceedings, Isabella found herself navigating a world that was both familiar and startlingly new. The dust had settled, but the landscape of her life had been irrevocably altered. James's trial had been a media sensation, with Isabella and her family thrust into the spotlight. Despite the difficulty of reliving the painful truths of their past, Isabella had stood firm, her testimony playing a crucial role in bringing the full extent of the conspiracy to light. James, for his part, had faced the consequences of his actions with a dignity that surprised many. His cooperation and evident remorse had led to a reduced sentence, though he would still spend several years behind bars. As the fervor of public interest began to wane, Isabella found herself facing the daunting task of rebuilding her life and redefining her relationships. Her bond with Emily, though tested by the revelations, had proven resilient. They had begun the slow, sometimes painful process of honest communication, working through years of unspoken truths and buried emotions. "I know I can never fully make up for the deception," Emily had said during one of their heart-to-heart talks. But I want you to know that my love for you was never a lie. You are my daughter in every way that matters." Isabella had hugged her tightly, feeling the complex mix of love, hurt, and forgiveness that now defined their relationship. "I know, Mom," she had whispered. "We'll get through this together." Her relationship with Sophia and Olivia had also evolved, deepening in the wake of their shared ordeal. The three women had formed a tight-knit support system, each bringing their unique strengths to help the others navigate the aftermath of the scandal. One sunny afternoon, as they sat in Isabella's apartment sharing coffee and conversation, Olivia had broached a subject that had been on all their minds. "Have you thought about what you want to do next?" she asked Isabella. "I mean, professionally. Your work in child advocacy?" Isabella nodded, a determined glint in her eye. "Actually, I want to start a foundation, something to help other families affected by illegal adoptions and trafficking, to give them the support and resources we didn't have." Sophia's face lit up. "That's brilliant, and you know you'll have our full support, right?" My tech skills, Olivia's research expertise. We could make a real difference, Olivia added, her voice filled with excitement. As they began to brainstorm ideas for the foundation, Isabella felt a surge of purpose. This was how she could honor her birth mother's memory, make meaning out of the pain of her past, and help prevent others from suffering similar fates. In the weeks that followed, Isabella threw herself into the work of establishing the foundation. She reached out to legal experts, child welfare advocates, and even some of the other victims who had come forward in the wake of the scandal. The response was overwhelming, with offers of support and collaboration pouring in from all quarters. Amidst the flurry of activity, Isabella made time for regular visits to James in prison. These meetings were often difficult, fraught with complex emotions, but they were also healing in their own way. James, stripped of his wealth and power, showed a vulnerability and honesty that Isabella had never seen before. During one such visit, James had looked at her with tears in his eyes. "I know I have no right to ask this," he had said, his voice rough with emotion, "but I hope that someday, when I've served my time and tried to make amends, you might find it in your heart to give me a chance to be the father I should have been from the beginning." Isabella had reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "I can't promise what the future will hold," she had replied softly, "but I'm willing to take it one day at a time." As the foundation began to take shape, Isabella found herself drawing strength from unexpected sources. Elena, her biological aunt, had become a constant source of support and connection to her roots. Through Elena's stories and old family photos, Isabella was able to piece together a clearer picture of Maria, the mother she had never known, but whose legacy she now carried forward. 1 year to the day after the truth had been revealed to the world, Isabella stood before a crowd of supporters, reporters, and fellow survivors at the official launch of the Suarez Foundation for Family Justice. As she looked out at the sea of faces, she felt a profound sense of purpose and belonging. "We are here today," she began, her voice strong and clear, "not just to remember the injustices of the past, but to build a better future. A future where every child knows their true heritage, where families are built on love and truth, not deception and manipulation. Together, we can turn our pain into purpose, our struggles into strength." As applause filled the room, Isabella caught the eyes of her family, Emily, Sophia, and Olivia beaming with pride, Elena wiping away tears of joy, and on a small screen set up for the occasion, James watching from prison, his face a mixture of regret and hope. In that moment, Isabella felt the full weight of her journey, the pain, the revelations, the hard-won truths. But she also felt the incredible strength that had brought her to this point. She was no longer defined by the lies of her past, but by the choices she had made and the family she had forged through adversity. As she continued her speech, outlining the foundation's mission and goals, Isabella knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. There would be challenges ahead, old wounds that still needed healing, and new battles to fight. But for the first time in her life, she felt truly whole, truly herself. Isabella Maria Suarez, daughter of Maria, raised by Emily, sister to Sophia and Olivia, shaped by a past both painful and profound, was ready to face the future on her own terms. Her story, once a tangled web of lies and hidden truths, had become a testament to the power of resilience, the strength of chosen family, and the enduring human capacity for growth and redemption. As the launch event came to a close, and Isabella found herself surrounded by her loved ones, she realized that her journey of self-discovery had led her not just to the truth of her origins, but to a deeper understanding of who she was and who she could become. The road ahead was open, full of possibilities, and Isabella was ready to walk it with courage, compassion, and an unshakable sense of self. The end of this chapter was truly just the beginning of a new, authentic life, one that Isabella was finally fully prepared to embrace. 5 years had passed since the launch of the Suarez Foundation for Family Justice, and Isabella found herself standing once again on the balcony of her apartment, watching the sun set over the city. So much had changed, yet in many ways, she felt she had come full circle. The foundation had grown beyond her wildest dreams, becoming a beacon of hope for families torn apart by illegal adoptions and trafficking. With Sophia's technological innovations and Olivia's meticulous research, they had helped reunite dozens of families and brought several trafficking rings to justice. Emily had become an integral part of the Foundation's counseling program, her experience and compassion proving invaluable to those grappling with complex family dynamics. As for James, he had been released from prison a year ago, his sentence reduced for good behavior and continued cooperation with ongoing investigations. His re-entry into society had been challenging, but he had thrown himself into volunteer work, using his business acumen to help the foundation secure funding and partnerships. Isabella's relationship with James remained complex, a delicate balance of forgiveness and caution. They had regular dinners, sometimes joined by the rest of the family, where they would talk openly about the past and their hopes for the future. It wasn't always easy, but Isabella found that each conversation brought a little more healing, a little more understanding. On this particular evening, Isabella was preparing for a special family gathering. It was the anniversary of Maria's birthday, and for the first time, they were all coming together to celebrate the woman whose life had set this entire journey in motion. As guests began to arrive, Isabella felt a familiar warmth in her chest. Elena was the first to enter, carrying a dish of Maria's favorite dessert, made from an old family recipe. Sophia and Olivia arrived together, their arms full of photo albums and mementos they had collected over the years. Emily came next, her eyes misty as she hugged Isabella tightly. James was the last to arrive, looking nervous but determined. In his hands, he held a small, beautifully wrapped package. As they gathered around the dining table, now expanded to accommodate their growing family, Isabella looked at the faces of those she loved most in the world. Each of them had played a crucial role in her journey, had helped shape her into the woman she was today. Before we begin, Isabella said, raising her glass, I want to propose a toast to Maria, whose love and sacrifice brought us all together in ways we could never have imagined, and to family, not just the one we're born into, but the one we choose and the one that chooses us. As glasses clinked and murmurs of agreement filled the room, Isabella felt a profound sense of peace. She had come to realize that family wasn't defined by blood or by flawless relationships, but by the willingness to stand by each other through both joy and pain, to face hard truths together, and to choose love and forgiveness even when it seemed impossible. The evening unfolded with laughter, tears, and heartfelt conversations. Stories of Maria were shared, piecing together a fuller picture of the woman who had given Isabella life. James, in a moment of vulnerability, shared memories of Evelyn and his early days with baby Isabella, his voice thick with emotion as he expressed his regret and his gratitude for the second chance he had been given. As the night wore on, James approached Isabella with the package he had brought. I've been waiting for the right moment to give you this, he said softly. I think tonight is it. Isabella unwrapped the gift carefully, gasping as she revealed a beautiful locket. Inside was a tiny photo of Maria on one side and Evelyn on the other. I had this made to honor both of the mothers who loved you, James explained. I hope it can serve as a reminder of where you came from and how far you've come. Tears welled in Isabella's eyes as she clasped the locket around her neck. It felt like the final piece of a puzzle falling into place, a tangible symbol of her complex heritage and the journey that had brought her to this moment. As the evening drew to a close and guests began to depart, Isabella found herself once again on the balcony, this time joined by Emily and Elena. The three women stood in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. You know, Emily said finally, when I first took you in, I never could have imagined this. All the pain, yes, but also all the love and healing. You've built something beautiful, Isabella." Elena nodded in agreement. "Maria would be so proud of you, Mija. You've honored her memory in ways I never thought possible." Isabella smiled, feeling the weight of the locket against her chest. "I couldn't have done it without all of you," she said. "Each of you has given me a piece of myself, has helped me become who I am." As they stood there, the city lights twinkling below them, Isabella felt a sense of completion. The journey that had begun with a shocking revelation had led her through darkness and pain, but had ultimately brought her to a place of light and love. She was Isabella Maria Suarez, daughter of Maria and Evelyn, raised by Emily, sister to Sophia and Olivia, shaped by James's mistakes and redemption. She was a survivor, an advocate, a bridge between broken families. She was whole, not despite her complicated past, but because of it. As the night deepened and stars appeared in the sky, Isabella made a silent promise to herself and to the memory of both her mothers. She would continue to use her story to bring hope to others, to fight for justice, and to cherish the family she had found and built. The little girl who had once been lost in a web of lies had found her way home, not to a place, but to herself and to the love that surrounded her. And in that moment, under the vast expanse of the night sky, Isabella knew that no matter what challenges the future might hold, she was exactly where she was meant to be. The end of this chapter was not just a conclusion, but a new beginning, a life lived with purpose, surrounded by love, and grounded in the truth of who she was and who she could become. Isabella's story, once a mystery, had become a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of love in all its complex forms. As she hugged Emily and Elena goodnight and closed the door behind the last of her guests, Isabella felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over her. She was home, in every sense of the word, and the future stretched out before her, full of possibilities. With a smile on her face and peace in her heart, Isabella turned out the lights and prepared for whatever new adventures tomorrow might bring. Her journey, she knew, was far from over, but now she was ready to write each new chapter on her own terms, surrounded by the family she had found, forgiven, and chosen. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.